Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Meet the Chicago Historians from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Monday, May the 21st, the year 2012 or 2012. The subject the panel will be talking about will be They Came to Chicago. And they came to Chicago, political conventions, major sports events, international conferences, world fairs, and etc. So with further ado, let's turn over to our moderator, Rich Lang. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Now I do it.
Yeah.
From the John DeVita Broadcast Center at an undisclosed location on the northwest side of Chicago, we're proud to present this edition of Meet the Chicago Historians. Now here's the creator, producer, chief electrical engineer, troubleshooter, and all-round good guy, Mr. John DeVita.
Yay! Thank you, and welcome to another broadcast. I know we're going to have a very interesting program today, so go ahead and get started, guys.
I guess I'm up. Yeah, this is Jack Ryan, sitting in the MC's chair strictly through default. Wound up with this job, glad to have it, though. Welcome, it's another beautiful day as we're recording this. As you're hearing this, it'll probably be a different time of day, but right now the sun's trying to peek through. This is the 21st of May, and our friends who have come to visit us to see the people from NATO are still here. I understand they'll be over in front of Boeing today on Canal. That's where they're supposed to be. But anyway, before we get into our regular program, we have a few things like around town, like in the different museums. The Chicago History Museum. Did anyone ever hear of that one? Yeah, we will.
Chicago History Museum?
The old historical.
Old Chicago Historical Society.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Change that name.
It's been around longer than you have.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a marketing thing, like people don't know there was a museum.
I think they wanted to remove any doubt about exclusivity or being,
Right. That was it, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounded like it was a society.
Like,
it was
limited
to
in group, and
right.
right, and so they wanted to,
Well, they have a
expand
show
that.
opening up on magic. So,
Can I sing?
I suppose it's stage magic, I guess. I don't think they mean alchemy or anything, black
okay.
magic or anything like that. That's what's coming.
Oh.
And right down the street from there, we're going to introduce the panel in a moment, gang.
Yeah.
They're getting restless. There's a nature museum, a Peggy
Notebart. Yeah.
Notebart Nature Museum. Now, she has this a couple of things going there. One, right now, they do, is the history of the bicycle, from something that was sometimes thought of as a toy to something that's, especially this day and age, it belongs more to the adults, I would say, than into something that's a serious mode of transportation and fitness. That's there through September 9th. Now, what they also have, and Frank Matthew did a piece on this about 6 months ago. It's called Lost Panoramas. It's all about the making of the IM Canal.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, there's the book out of that.
Yeah, the book. Someone in the sanitary district found a warehouse with thousands of these glass impression photos, and they've got these on prints of those on display. And there is a book, as Al just said. So if anyone wants it, it's very expensive. Tell the family, I'm working toward Christmas. Maybe it'll be a good Christmas present.
What about Father's Day first?
Well, Fatherhood is a gift of its own.
Yeah, but it's an opportunity for you. What would you like for? Well, there's this new book out,
Yeah, making a tie. Now, over at the Shed Aquarium, we've got that display about the jellies, which is sponsored, oddly enough, by
apricot,
Walgreens.
grape,
Jellies.
raspberry,
Yeah, I was going to
strawberry,
say,
blueberry.
Peter Pan or Skippy missed their chance.
The little fish with no brain is what
They used to be called jellyfish, but
And,
they decided that they
There's
really were
something
not
opening
fish.
at the Museums of Natural History, the Field Museum, about Genghis Khan, I believe. I thought that was an excellent choice of subject matters considering our local political situation here.
Attila the Hun was in the running, but he lost out to Genghis Khan.
I don't know much about
conceded
Genghis Khan except he swept in with the hordes and all over Europe and pillaged and plundered and killed. And I do remember that movie, John Wayne, the Conqueror, from 1955?
No.
He's Genghis Khan in it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Lord, send me some men. 6'4" with the makeup and
Cowboy hat.
yeah. That was an odd picture. Susan Hayward.
Oh,
Who else was in that? A lot of people, but Dick Powell directed it, and it's like considered one of the campiest, worst, best pictures because it's so campy. However, there's a downside. They filmed on a spot that had been an atomic proving ground, and a whole lot of people died of cancer after that.
yeah. I think John was
He did.
affected. Yeah.
Susan Hayward did, I believe.
Yeah.
Dick Powell.
Dick Powell, Pedro Armendáriz.
Yeah.
John Wayne did a number of films in the 50s. His agents and the people wanted to change his image. So instead of just playing cowboys and cops and soldiers, they got him into he played the first American ambassador to Japan. He made a movie of that. He plays a German sea captain in a movie called The Sea Chase.
Long Voyage Home.
Long Voyage Home. That was
Eugene O'Neill stuff.
made like 1940.
Yeah.
But he made a movie called The Sea Chase, in which he plays a German sea captain at the beginning of World War II who is still loyal to the Kaiser. I mean, these are not roles that you think of as being made for John Wayne.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't reading the
Did
newspaper.
he have an accent at all in the movie?
No, he
Tried
didn't.
to have an
He didn't. He
accent?
didn't attempt to do an accent.
Yeah.
No.
No, was that Kaiser Wilhelm or Kaiser Fraser?
I think it was Kaiser Wilhelm. He wasn't doing commercials.
Was there
for the-
I never found a difference. Oh, one was a Forder and one was a...
Okay, one more. Let me finish this stuff up here. We're trying a new thing here. Museum of Science and Industry, of course, has one of our favorite places. The only place where the do not touch button does not exist, right?
You're right.
Okay, March 15th to September 12th. It's all about science storms, and we know what those are: tornadoes, hurricanes, etc. So, and let's see, one more we got here. One more we got. Magic. And who haven't we mentioned yet? Adler Planetarium, May 25th, opens Welcome to the Universe. So I guess it is amazing if you haven't been there in years. Like I remember we were there in trips.
You haven't been to the universe, or you haven't been to
Which one?
They're going somewhere else.
Remember 4.5 billion years
just so
ago when you were
we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
There's there have been so many discoveries in astronomy and whatever, any field of science, but go back, you get the old sky show, which is great, but there's so many other things to see there. I know because, we take the kids. Now pretty soon I'll be taking grandchildren, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we can make a whole discussion
Anyway.
on that alone.
Yeah.
Big Bang Theory versus
about it
evolution.
right now.
Yeah.
So, it's time to introduce our panel. I'm going to start this side this time. Al Opitz.
Al Opitz, Austin
Tell us
River
about
Community
yourself.
Council president, and I'm glad that John Ryan can do so well. He's getting paid all that good money, so
Twice what
thank
you
you.
want. That's Pam.
I'm Jeanette Frontier, and happy to be here this morning with this great panel, and hope we get into our NATO
And you have some radio
conversation.
background too, right?
I do. I was on WJJG for a few years, and I could probably sit here an hour and tell you what I've done in my life, but I'm just fine, and I'm happy to be here today.
Next up.
Hi, I'm Richard Lang, active in the Irving Park Historical Society and a longtime Chicago history buff. Many years a student in Ken Little's history class at Wright College.
Ken Little, retired from the fire department and currently teaching Chicago history at Wright College in Chicago on Narragansett Avenue.
And I'm John Escacholco, and I was privileged to do radio on WJJG for some time, doing a morning program with John DeVita, and I enjoyed doing that as well as an afternoon show, and hold a master's degree in history, and it's great to be here with all these distinguished and eminent historians.
And we have a guest today sitting in with us, someone I've known for some time, a good friend, Tom McKenna. You want to tell us?
Yeah, Tom McKenna. I'm glad to be here. This is my first time on the program. I am a very lifelong friend of John Ryan, and as far as I know, I'm the only one that will admit that.
In front of the witnesses yet. Okay, gang. We're going to start off here with, they came to Chicago, and our topic is all about the various conventions, conferences, international events like our Pan American Games, sporting events, and particularly we want to mention something right now about NATO, and as much as this is their last day when our friendly visitors are in town, and I don't mean the heads of the other countries, but Okay, let's get just to it. Just what are we talking about when we're talking about NATO, Jeanette?
Well, Jack, I think it's really ironic that today, being the last day of the summit, that we can sit here and talk about something that is probably we don't think of too often. But I'd like to bring a few facts up, and with this great panel, I know you're going to be able to add so much more to it. The first thing that started me off on wanting to talk about it was I have the luck of being around a lot of people every day, and I started saying things like, what does NATO mean? And of course, 9 out of 10 did not know what it stood for. And so we'll clarify that right away. It's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, and you're right, they're dated here for May 20th and 21. And what I want to say about it is this. For all of us, it's a questionable time. We are ill-informed, and we are inquisitive, and we are curious, and most of us don't have a clue. We are watching roads being off limits. Our trains are scrutinized. Main buildings are closed. Others will have plenty of security. Some businesses will decide to stay open or closed. We have the guest being President Obama, and of course our Mayor Emanuel, and we have many dignitaries and many protesters. Thousands of police doing security and manned boats on the lakefront. And then again, so I'm told it's a meeting. Well, I wondered to myself, that's not the way a meeting sounds to me. So the North Atlantic Treaty was signed April 4th, 1949 at the Departmental Auditorium in Washington, D.C. It has 3 components, and it is made up of 1,236 words. The 3 components are multinational cooperation. That means prevent shortages or needless duplication by observing what neighbor countries are cutting or producing. The second is specialization. Help identify individual military cultures and defense capabilities of member countries. And the third is prioritization, sharing defense spending as a leading goal. There are 28 countries that will be involved, and so far 50 countries have arrived. Let's see, and of course what the whole object of this is, security is the main issue around our countries and about the wars. And on September 11th, when we were attacked at the towers, they exercised Article 5. And Article 5, is of the 1949 North Atlantic Treaty, which created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, reads in part, the parties agree that an armed attack against one or more of them in Europe or North America shall be considered an attack against them all. Article 5 was invoked for the first time in the wake of September 11th, 2001. Terrorist attacks in the United States. NATO has commanded international security assistance force operations as part of the war in Afghanistan since 2003. And I just thought those were some interesting facts that I know all of you here on the panel are very versed on, so much more than I possibly know about it. So it'll be interesting to convey how we feel about the NATO and what we think of it. And of course right now the big thing is the Afghanistan ending of the war, and what will it entail, what will they be running into, how will it affect securities in other countries, And so if you please, maybe we could take it from there.
I think that everyone that's been listening to you, they now know about 99% more about NATO than they knew when you started to speak.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
thank you. That's what I found out, too.
It's actually amazing how little people know about NATO.
I happen to have surrounded in the summer by many college graduates who are looking for their own jobs. And, of course, ironic, the protesters are shouting that up and down the street. And when I ask them these kinds of questions, what does NATO mean, and what is it about, and how do you feel about it? It was either I really don't care, I don't know what NATO means, and how does it affect me? And so that's when I came home and I thought, you know what, maybe it is time to clarify why we have or do what we do. And you're right, Tom.
Well, one thing that I noticed, I mean, watching the televised portion of the demonstration, when the newscasters asked the demonstrators, what are you here for, they had their talking points down quite well, because they all seemed to say the exact same words. You know, where NATO is about war and they're a war machine and things like that. But they didn't do any follow-up questions, because if I was interviewing someone and I asked them and got that response, I would say, how do you know that? Where did you get your information? And they didn't do any follow-up.
And that is probably our whole society problem in general. We all can tell a story or repeat something, but if we don't get the facts right, we really don't care. Just so we're conversation. And I think sometimes on a serious subject like this.
Well, and plus, I mean, I would have asked the demonstrators, don't you think there's a better way that you could get your message out other than in a face-to-face confrontation with police officers?
Exactly.
But they don't want they don't want that. They want the face-to-face confrontation.
Well, that's right.
They know that they can't. They're never going to persuade anybody that the United States is a warmonger and that NATO's a war machine. The only way they can get any coverage is to create chaos and disturbance. They want the confrontation.
This is the same old radical thing over again with a different name.
Yep.
Sure.
You had it in the 30s, the 20s,
Sure.
turn of the century, that century.
Well, the other thing you could ask people is, what is Afghanistan? Now, Afghanistan's got a long and convoluted history. It was called the Silk Road for many years because of the fact they used to transport silk from the Far East to Europe. But Genghis Khan did a lot of damage in his wartime. Apparently it was quite a, what they call a green country at one time, and aquifers and stuff like that, and Genghis Khan came in and destroyed all that. So it's been convoluted, and consequently it's been where it's at. But also a period of time was with radicalization of various religions didn't help things either. And you have that fight going on all the time.
If I could just say a couple of things. NATO grew out of the aftermath of World War II. It's a direct result of the ending of World War II and the fact that by 1949 we realized we were facing the Genghis Khan of the 20th century, Joseph Stalin, who was in command of a huge ground army. Russia had been devastated by World War II. We didn't even realize at the time how totally flat on its back the Soviet Union was. But they did still have this enormous ground army and tanks and artillery, and Europe had been devastated. Germany was defeated, France had been defeated, the smaller countries. There was a joke at the time that said the only thing the Russians need to get to the English Channel is shoe leather, because there was nothing that could have stopped them. The British had it. Britain was still powerful, but Britain had a navy and an air force. Britain could never put the kind of army onto the continent to stop the Russians. So the only country that was going to stop a possible direct invasion from Russia was the United States. That's why you get the title, the North Atlantic Treaty, that this was going to bind Europe and the United States together. These were all, at the time, they were all countries that kind of bordered the North Atlantic. Now, Italy was a member, and Italy didn't border, but they, they've always fudged that idea that you had to be on the Atlantic. But the idea was this was a commitment that if the Russian army were to come across the frontiers, that would mean war with the United States. That was why the agreement said that an attack on one is an attack on all. So that if Stalin's thinking, well, I can knock over Germany, I can take France,
No.
do I want war with the United States of America? No. In fact, the first Supreme Commander of NATO was Dwight David Eisenhower. He was called out. He was in retirement. He was president of Columbia University, I believe. He had left the Army. He had been chief of staff after the war. Then he left the Army. And President Truman asked him to return to uniform, and he was sent back to Europe as the first Supreme Commander of NATO. We sent B-29 bombers to Britain. First time after the war that we had positioned our heavy bombers in Britain with nuclear weapons. And we advertised the fact they were carrying nuclear weapons. So this was all an attempt to deal with the threat from the Soviet Union to the countries of Europe. And without it, Europe could have easily been taken by the Russians.
Right, and excuse me for interfering with you, John, but I often question how little of this we even heard of in our schooling and so on. I mean, more facts than I've ever heard right now. And also, not to override this, Al brought up Afghanistan, and here's just a couple lines here that answers something too. What happens in Afghanistan will affect the future of the broader region and shape NATO's legacy. I've seen NATO's single largest present-day commitment, and let me tell you, NATO's support for training and funding Afghan security forces after 2014 will be critical to their long-term success. In 2001, Afghanistan was the right war in the right place at the right time. Now we must all work to achieve that war's right ending at the right time. NATO must do its part. Do you agree, or does this answer anything? I mean, are we? Why is Afghanistan important?
It's a portal.
Well, remember, it was 2000, and I saw one of these demonstrators saying, "Yeah, we're killing all these people in Afghanistan, and they never did anything to us." Well, you might want to take this person to the center of Manhattan and show them the big empty space where those two buildings used to stand, called the World Trade Center. If you think that nothing ever happened to us from Afghanistan, that was where Bin Laden's headquarters was.
Our daughter almost took a job with a firm at the World Trade Center.
Really? Yeah.
After the Soviet Union collapsed and communism crashed, and there was the end of the Soviet Empire, the thought was determined that NATO should stay together, that it had been such a success in preserving freedom in Europe that it should now kind of expand its responsibilities to any outside threat that came to the free nations that are members, such as the terrorist threat that we're dealing with.
What's interesting, too, to see,
Afghanistan.
after the fall of the Soviet system, how many former Soviet republics and former Soviet puppet states, or what do you want to call them?
Sure.
Yeah.
Former Warsaw Pact members. I'm sure it's optional to join that, wasn't it? The Warsaw Pact was Joe Stalin's alliance.
His answer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
But I mean, all of them came right to join, eventually,
Yeah.
NATO.
Yeah.
We have, of course, everybody knows I was formerly a town official in Cicero. We've always had a large Lithuanian American population there. We observe Lithuanian Independence Day every year. And a few years back, we had the ambassador from Lithuania who came, and they pointed out that the United States was now flying air missions out of air bases in Lithuania. Now, before the collapse of the Soviet Union, Lithuania had been part of the Soviet Union.
Lithuania, SSR.
Sure, and if you think that Putin and his ilk are happy that U.S. Air Force planes are operating out of bases in what used to be their backyard, their territory, well, they don't like that at all. But those countries eagerly joined. Poland, the Czech Republic, all the Hungary, all those nations that had been satellites of the Soviet Union.
That also brings up a story, brings up a point to me. Just because the Soviet system broke down, is Putin all of a sudden a Boy Scout?
No.
He was the
KGB.
NKVD or whatever.
He's still a KGB.
Once
Yeah, always.
I went to Russia a couple of years ago, and there was a big spread between the people under 40 and over 40. The people over 40 kept on looking behind their back to see if anybody was following them. This is how persuasive he is. The young kids don't remember that too well, so they're out selling whatever they can. And I got a T-shirt at home that says Harley Davidson, and they got St. Petersburg across the back. The other one I missed and I didn't want to buy was the Golden Arches with McLennan underneath it. So, I mean, this is the entrepreneurship that they have over there with the kids.
Right.
And the older people are still afraid of Putin.
Yeah.
And they won't admit it.
Yeah.
And Putin's quite rich.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
We had a tour of St. Petersburg, and there was a 3-mast replica of a ship there they used for a restaurant. That was a gift of Putin to the city. So, you know, if he could give a gift of this type, don't ask me why he did it, but that's, you know.
It's a contradiction to
it's
the wealth of,
There was another point we just brought up about, you know, how well do the kids know about it today, or were they informed? Tom and I went through school. We're baby boomers, okay? Weren't we pretty well informed through our little messenger? Remember that one news thing we used to have every week? Did we know what NATO was and what it was all about? What you say?
Well, that, I mean, you know, to get back what I was talking about earlier with interviewing these demonstrators, you know, it seems to me, I mean, how absolutely little they know about history, and you know, I mean, the message, they're anti-war. Who isn't?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, this is a unique concept.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're against violence.
Yeah.
We're against the war.
Mm-hmm.
We're for peace. We all are.
Yes.
It's just that you have to be realistic and realize that as hard as it is to believe, there are some very evil people in this world. And when those evil people decide to do something evil to someone else, someone has to be there to stop them. The people that are there to stop them are the good guys, not the bad guys. And I think that they are kind of confused about their concept. We're all on the same page. We all want peace. No one wants war. You know, we're all for love. But there is a point where you have to become realistic about what is really happening in this world. And the people, the real evil people, know what they can do, who they can do it to. And there has to be people, again, to stand up and fight against the evil. And that's I think that they don't realize that.
Very naive. Very naive. Very.
You know, I mean, when I was looking at some of the comments of some of these demonstrators and the comments that they were making about the Chicago Police Department, in talking about, again, the police department were the bad guys, and that they want to hurt us. They want the thing that comes to mind, because I'm a retired Chicago police officer. Every police officer that was there has a gun. Mm-hmm. If they really wanted to do harm to you, pull the guns out. Mm-hmm. And this isn't something that hasn't happened in third world countries. The police there do use firearms to control the crowd.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, again, it's I don't know if the word I'm looking for is naive. I don't like to use stupidity, but whatever it is, they don't really have a handle on reality.
In many
Does anyone think of Brain Dead? Anybody like that one?
See, in many countries around the world, the firearm is not the last resort of the police. It's the first. It's the first thing they do is start shooting.
It's Mexico. I mean, here we go.
No, a
I
guy
mean,
that
you know.
both Tom and I worked with, who's been passed away since, Herbie Tetzlaff. Every year he would take his vacation, go to Mexico, and he loved going down there. Of course, you get more if you're whatever. Never learned Spanish, but he'd go down there every year. He said one time there was a student demonstration. He said there's these thousands lined up marching. Where are the police? Where are the police? Finally, at the end of the parade, two Mexican cops on solo motorcycles, two-wheel motorcycles. They had one truck. It was almost like a half-track. Guy driving it, and a guy sitting on top of it with a machine gun. So, I mean, there's their crowd control.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you step by a line. And
which also, the whole thing makes me think of, anybody here any German heritage, any descent? Okay. We always think of the Germans with the warfare, but the one, I am too, I'm half a German, I confess. There's an old German proverb that says, if you want peace, prepare for war. Now, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What Tom was just saying. We land on our arms and everything's going to be wonderful. It wouldn't work that way, believe me. Unless you got more of this, look out, brother.
Yeah. Look at the evil people, though. They go under the guise of religion. You know, they'll come out there and they say, I'm for so-and-so and so-and-so, and God's with me. You know, Hitler said that. even though he was atheist, they still use that term. The English used it too in their wars, so every country uses it.
You were talking about, everybody, this country wanted peace and did not want war right up until the morning of December 7th, 1941, when war was deposited right on our doorstep, whether we wanted it or not.
Yeah. A rude awakening, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting a signal from the control room, and the master says it's time for a break. You are listening to...
You are listening to Meet the Chicago Historians. We'll be right back.
Well, yes.
Exhibitors Carpet Service has changed their name to a Carpet Warehouse at 4300 West Montrose Avenue in Chicago, and now their new location at 440 Sheridan Road in Highwood, called Carpet of Highwood. Stop in and see Mike at Carpet Warehouse, 4300 Montrose Avenue, and their phone number is area code 773-283-0100, or see Brian Muir at 440 Sheridan Road in Highwood, Illinois, and their phone number is area code 847-266-1400. For carpets in your living room, dining room, bedroom, den, or your family room, stop in at either location for a great deal. Once again, see Mike at Carpet Warehouse, 4300 Montrose Avenue. That's on Montrose Avenue between Pulaski and Cicero on the north side of the street. And their phone number is area code 773-283-0100 in Chicago. Or Carpet of Highwood at 440 Sheridan Road. And Brian's phone number out there is area code 847-266-1400 in Highwood. Remember, if you need a carpet for your living room, dining room, bedroom, den, family room, stop in and see Mike, 4300 Montrose Avenue in Chicago, 773-0100, or Brian Muir at 440 Sheridan Road in Highwood, and their phone number is area code 847-266-1400. And you are listening to Meet the Chicago Historians from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now back to our panel and our moderator, Jack Ryan or Rich Lang. Take it away, guys.
Now back to the Chicago Historians.
Oh, Richard, thank you. Someone was telling us we should get a little interplay between us, like the, Johnny Carson.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, how's this one? Oh, Richard, how many bartenders are you supporting these days?
That only works with Ed McMahon.
Yeah. Benny used to do that more with, he did it with Phil Harris, though.
Phil Harris, yeah.
Yeah, Phil Harris was sort of sober all the time. He just acted drunk. That was his whole thing. And Faye Ellis was his
Faye, yeah.
Was his wife, and they had quite a duel, and they had their own radio show.
They had a great radio show.
And she had more money than he did, I think. So that's why he married her, supposedly.
No, it was sort of funny. I listened to it. I think it was Phil Harris. He was on radio. I said, "This is during the Depression. We were only making $400 a week."
Yeah. He was here, by the way, at the Century of Progress, and his orchestra performed. Yeah.
Phil Harris.
And Remley. Yeah. He had his second banana was Remley.
He was a real guy, too. Frankie Remley.
Right. I guess the what they call lead but
the premise was that he didn't have too much upstairs. That was always the Remley was always a little bit slow on the uptake.
he played the part anyway. Yeah.
Getting back to NATO. Where were we? We're talking about NATO and a peacekeeping force, and I guess a lot of people don't even realize how much the different countries have contributed in the Middle East as far as troops. And I know Iceland. I read Iceland does not have a standing army or a sitting one, but they do have a coast guard, and they have recently trained some special forces to go to the. They were exempted though. They're supposed to have a standing army to be in NATO, but they're like land forces, I guess you'd call it, recently trained. And I saw last night too on the new last night or Saturday. Our governor Quinn was downstate with the president of Poland.
Right. Yeah.
And there was the Air Force Base where they train Polish.
It was National Guard base.
Did you see that, anyone?
Yeah, that was
I
National
saw it.
Guard's,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
National Guard's base, and they were.
Yeah.
I guess the Polish National Guard being trained here by the U.S. National Guard. And they had a couple of wars, which is unusual because usually presidents don't come down and award anybody in a foreign country. So it's sort of unusual, but it was a great PR thing anyway.
It was, yeah. It was well covered, and they all went down there in a helicopter. And
This isn't foreign country. This is America.
Saturday night, I had an opportunity to meet and speak with one of the participants in the NATO conference. The Prime Minister of the Czech Republic visited Cicero Saturday night before the conference began at Klaas Restaurant. They had a big reception there for Czech Americans, all the Czech organizations. Of course, Cermak Road, named for a Czech.
Sure.
And Czechs were, for many years, a huge portion of the population of Cicero. So I was asked to represent the town of Cicero and to welcome him. I greeted him as he entered, presented him with a resolution from the town, and one of the other officials was there with me, and we had our pictures taken. Met the defense minister of the Czech Republic, who knew Judy Topinka, our state controller. I told him I had served with her in the legislature. And Madeleine Albright, the former Secretary of State.
Was she born there?
I think part of her ancestry is Czech. I'm not sure if she was born.
Yeah,
She's mixed, real mixed.
She said she had lived in Chicago. She said she had lived in Chicago around 1960. And remembered coming to Cicero, remembered traveling through Cicero. And
Oh yeah,
Cicero.
one of those all-night places.
Yeah. So I had a very interesting time. Had some good
Marvelous.
pictures taken.
Just
And
kidding.
man's name was Petr Nečas,
Now, John,
the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic.
what would happen if those checks bounced?
All right, well, time for me to exit.
I got that joke from you.
I did say he was a lifelong friend. I think our friendship just ended with that joke.
the friendship
You
just
did
ended.
have that disclaimer. You're the only one that will admit it.
Right. Well, now there's no one that will admit it.
But there was another little story came up. Was it Friday or Saturday? Obama and Quinn and Emmanuel, I couldn't think of his name first. Someone said Daley.
Yeah.
They went on a yacht by themselves out there in Lake Michigan, and they were starting to capsize. There was a problem there, and there was only one life jacket. So right away, the governor says, "Mr. President, take this. You're the president, the leader of the free world." And Emmanuel says, "No, we'll do this right. We're going to vote on it." So the three of them voted, and Emmanuel won 10-2.
Chicago voting rules prevailed.
Well,
Otto Kerner, John Kennedy.
and first Mayor Daley.
Yeah.
that gives me a good lead-in to go back to Afghanistan just to finish this.
Go.
Being such a corrupt country and having so many wars, I mean years and years of wars, will they be able, do you think, to come to a conclusion in these last 2 days of handling Afghanistan and that
most of the stuff is
priority?
already predetermined. They go down there and just finish it off. It's like rubber stamping.
Yeah, but things aren't usually
Kinda
decided at
cover
summit.
over.
Usually all the agreements
Yeah.
have been made, and the heads of state meet to just sign and have their pictures
Yeah, it's
taken.
A photo op.
So it
machine.
doesn't,
Yeah, right.
it doesn't
I
get
was-
into official right away.
How many
Right.
Afghans does Karzai really speak for? The country is so fragmented and tribalized.
Well, the problem,
Yeah.
that's part of the problem. You got that area. You got the Muslim group is the Sunnis and the Shiites, and they fight each other. And then within the group there, they have their tribal alliances.
Yeah.
So they fight that way too. So consequently, it's not easy to settle 2,000-year-old disputes, which they don't even know what's about.
Yeah,
they just fight because it's fighting.
Yeah,
well,
it's like they have
you certainly can't win something by saying we're getting out by August, whatever it is.
Yeah, you can't
just
set
don't
a
say
date.
anything.
No, yeah.
Enemy can just wait.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's sort of stupid too. Al Qaeda comes in there and wants to fight more and more, and they said if they wait 3 years, they can take over with no problem whatsoever. Meanwhile, they're losing all their membership. How many people want to commit suicide, and how many people come back from a suicide?
Yeah.
It's sort of dumb in the first place. They're going to go to heaven or whatever it is, and come back and let us know about it. But
well, it's in the country too. It has no government. It has no telephone system,
exactly
no mail
what I was
system,
thinking,
no
Ken.
police,
They
no
don't even
judges.
have a
No, they
pattern
don't
or
have. No,
form.
they don't have
Nothing's-
an infrastructure.
It's a
Yeah.
little anarchy, basically. You're
Right,
trying
right.
to.
Well,
Not
or even
regimented
just
in any way.
I remember, was it in Iran? I think it was. He opened up, this a number of years ago, opened up a, I guess you'd call it a shopping mall. He said, you know what? It's the only building in the country with air conditioning. It's the only building with an escalator, and people used to ride up and down the escalator. Just
charged.
yeah, right.
Charged.
You get a charge. What the hell is this? You don't have to walk. So
What was this, in Iran, I mean?
I think it was Iran. Yeah.
Well, supposedly the population of Iran is very much overall highly
Excuse me,
educated.
Iraq, not
But also-
Iran. Iraq.
Oh, Iraq,
Yeah,
okay.
Iraq,
But in Iran also, the Iranians are rank and file were very much pro-American.
Yeah. There, we've been waiting for it, the regime to topple. But anytime you have one man in charge completely, like the.
Well, if you notice that any international politics is such, talk to the average person on the street, they really don't care to, they don't even like the government in many cases, but they have no choice in the matter.
No.
It's like a dictatorship.
Well,
You come here in Chicago, you essentially got the mayor downtown, and he controls everything.
What did Woody Allen say in Love and Death? What's the only difference between the Tsar and Napoleon is the Tsar's a little taller.
Well, you look at Syria, for example. When they had the Arab, so-called Arab Spring, which I'm not a fan of that statement, but when Mubarak was threatened, his police made some attempt to put it down. They didn't use really brutal force. They didn't bring cannons in or machine guns, from what I could tell. And eventually, Mubarak just threw in the towel and left. And if he'd left the country, he wouldn't be on trial now. But you look at Syria, where they've been predicting for weeks and months that Assad would fall, and he's still there. As long as your army is willing to keep shooting, as long as you got loyal troops, they'll go out every day and shoot the demonstrators. You can stay in power pretty much as long as you want.
Yeah, some of these people are strange. This reminds me of the old mob attitude here in Chicago in the Prohibition period.
Yeah.
They go out and they're ordered to shoot their brother. They go out and shoot their brother.
Yeah. Maybe you guys have just put your finger on something that in all these countries you're talking about, they can't, people can't change. And maybe that's the younger people feel the same way. How are we going to change,
We're not allowed.
Yeah, one vote for a governor, one vote for a mayor or a Cook County president, and it's all one party at the moment.
Yeah.
And we can't affect a change,
Right.
I mean, no one notices our one. We vote every couple of years, so maybe Tom, go out and get some publicity.
One of the best comments I ever heard encouraging people in this country to vote, and as we all know, the voting statistics in this country are abysmal. But on election day, and I forget who said it or where I read it, but it said, "Today, do something that millions of people around the world only dream about.
Yeah.
Vote."
Yeah.
And that's a really powerful statement.
Yeah. Yeah. And we take it for granted. That's the whole problem. We take everything for granted. Everything for granted. Well, if you dial 911, ambulance will show up, the fire department, the police department, somebody will be there. Harry Truman said the most important piece of property and land in the United States is that floor of that voting booth. You can change things, and we do change things. And I think this election might be. Of course, we say it every 4 years, I guess. But
you take a look at the 36th ward. You had the Banks administration in there.
Yeah.
And Sposato, who was essentially a fireman and had really no money, won.
Yeah.
And basically he won by people being upset.
Upset, yeah.
No.
They couldn't take it anymore. Yeah.
Right.
And
right.
his anointed committeeman lost also.
Yeah.
Apparently, people just got fed up. Now you got to have people with the mentality that were tired of it all,
Yeah.
and they vote against. But
Yeah.
but you got to find somebody who will be honest enough. As far as I'm concerned, the Northwest Side has 3 good aldermen. They got Fasado, Cullerton, even though he's got a long legacy, and Arena in the 45th. Arena right now is out battling to keep the Portage Theater alive. Fasado at least has open meetings. He still has a big learning curve yet.
Yeah.
And Cullerton, he has no agenda for a future except to retire. So he's doing his business too. He goes out there and does
Yeah.
what he'll call you at night.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and you've talked to him, and because I was at a meeting and I met Spasato too. Because he's ex-fireman, but they themselves don't know what's going on completely. You say, well, what are they doing over here at Central and Belmont? I don't know. Go check it out.
It's hard to know everything anyway.
Read through the ward boundaries, and there's about
and that's
a
it.
5-year lapse there before they take effect.
And
so
you're
don't
right,
know
Al.
what's going on
That's
now.
where it
Yeah.
begins. Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local.
Yeah, that's right.
You're more concerned about what's happening in your ward, your block.
Yeah, they got rid of LeVar in his 45th.
Yeah. So that's where. But you know what? We're going here. When's the last time anybody here saw a precinct captain?
That's right.
Are
Used to
there
have an
such
active
things
role.
anymore?
Some of the precinct captains were useless anyway. They
Well,
only
but-
want to go out and have you.
I was
got
a
to vote for my
precinct
I'm
kid.
just going to. I saw you yawn and you said,
So was I.
We
So
see
was
you,
I.
This is what we want.
Yeah.
So was I. But that's
Do
beside the
precinct
point.
captains exist nowadays?
I don't. I
Well,
haven't
they-
seen
Not in
one.
Chicago. I was
Yeah.
Not as strong as they used to be.
Oh,
Because
that's
No.
for sure.
they used to. Yeah, they served the purpose, but the fact was that their purpose was mainly to get the vote out for their candidate.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
And generally, it was the ward boss.
You went door to door.
Yeah.
And as soon as you don't see as much once the ward boss is gone, you got a new guy in there. He hasn't built an organization yet, so there's a learning curve for these guys. And
Which means that the mayor has all the power. We see it with
Well, if
with
you-
the
if-
votes that are there. Even right now, Daley's gone, but Emanuel is pushing through. We don't know how that infrastructure thing is going to work out.
but
Through
the
private
fact is,
development.
you don't get 99% confirmation of anything he says.
No, but
No. It's
But as
all
long as
just
it's-
said
At
and
least
taken
there's
back.
some resistance.
Yeah, but-
it might be token, but still some resistance.
I would imagine the aldermen feel powerless too at times. Anyway, I don't know if this is.
Well, it used to be that they controlled the
Maybe
bond.
NATO should come in and to the city council.
It used to
Well-
be that
Warsaw Pact.
The Warsaw Pact.
In respect to changes, you can see China and Japan, young and old, the young have become very Western.
yeah.
Yeah.
And now I'm noticing the monarchy in England is starting to get a feeling of this new couple, William and Kate, is it?
Yeah.
William and Mary.
She is doing
Yeah.
her duties,
Yeah.
but she is changing some of the ways they want her to present herself, from her dress, her
Yeah.
dressing,
Yeah.
her talk, her
Yeah.
reaching out to the public when they're there. Do you think something like that could end a
Well,
monarchy?
let's put it this way. There's an
Yeah.
article in
Well,
the newspaper this weekend
Yeah.
that said Kate Middleton likes nylon, so all of a sudden nylon sales
back.
shot up 500%.
And see what this amounts to is the media thinks it's a shock that a 30-year-old princess is going
Yeah.
to dress differently from
Right.
the queen who's 85.
and wants
Yeah.
to,
I mean, this is really
She
something.
can't wait
Something.
to-
Wow, this
Yeah.
is something. She's actually dressing
Yeah.
like a girl of 30. Well,
Yeah.
I think that they're really, and it's just natural, just perfectly normal. It
What's
should be.
funny
Yes.
about that, though, is the fact is Queen Elizabeth is the longest reigning monarch. She succeeded Victoria.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not
yet.
it's, I thought it was already.
It's pretty close,
Three
though.
more
I guess.
years.
3 more years.
Really?
Three.
Oh.
3 more years. Yeah, Victoria reigned for 63 years.
Good game.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Three more years.
Three more years.
A funny story to
Three
go
more
along
years
with
ago.
that, though. They said we asked them if they were interested about Charlie. Oh no!
Who?
He's 60. I don't know. I said he's 60 plus years old and never had a real job.
Yeah, right. He did the weather just recently
Yeah.
on the BBC.
What about Prince Philip? What was his real job?
Oh,
You know what his real job was.
Sun service.
Yeah.
Oh my
You know,
God.
some said it's
Useless.
really an awful position to be the Prince of Wales, because the only way you can fulfill your role and ambition is for your mother to die.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really a horrible circumstance
Yeah.
to be in. You would, on the one hand, I'm sure he'd like to be king, all things being equal. But for him to become king means that his mother has to die.
Yeah.
So that's an awful situation.
We all got to go
to be in.
sometime, don't we?
Well,
to be in that position, to know that that's the only way you're going to make it to what your role in life
Right.
is,
Yeah.
is for your mother to
if
die.
you look at monarchies all over the world, this is one of the ways they gained power, to kill the monarch.
Well,
Yeah.
You know, that was
very often there was friction between the...
Yeah, well, if you take a look at the czars, the
Russian
Caesars of ancient Rome, you know, how many
Yeah.
died of natural causes? I'll put it that way, unless
Yeah.
a knife had to be natural.
Yeah, their own guards were killing them.
Well, the problem with ancient Rome was that they never really developed a hereditary monarchy. It never passed for a period of time from father to son. It was always one general would murder the emperor, and then he would become general.
Yeah.
And then maybe he would bring his nephew in, and maybe his nephew would succeed, but then someone would murder the nephew. So there was never an imperial family in Rome
No,
for
you're
any
right.
stretch of time. That even Augustus Caesar had no son. Tiberius had no son. There wasn't the father to son succession.
Well, you got to remember one thing: Augustus Caesar was the only one that had the last name of Caesar. After that was Caesar.
It was all Caesar then.
Well, there was
Yeah.
Sid Caesar.
Yeah. Sid Caesar. Yeah.
But if you look
He
at
was
the
the king
even
of
if you look at-
comedy, you know.
If you look at the English history, how many died of unnatural causes, or the hereditary heir died of unnatural causes. You know, you look at the two princes that were killed by the uncle, I think it was, or whatever it was.
In the Tower, yeah, that was
Yeah,
Richard
Oh,
III.
yeah.
But that was that was really unusual. That was a bloody time in
But
English
still,
history.
a lot of them didn't survive that long.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
for various
You know,
reasons.
talking about the Roman Empire, what a lot of people brought up, and I think it's really interesting, is the similarities between the fall of the Roman Empire and what's happening now in this country.
In this
Right.
country, yeah.
Well, they
similar.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
One of the
you
main
know,
causes-
eat, drink, and be merry, and then all of a sudden you turn around and the people that were supplying us with the wine
Yeah.
no longer could supply us, and the people that were supplying us with the food can no longer supply us.
Well,
Yeah.
there was a little more to it than that. They said, sports and entertainment, we'll let somebody else do it.
Exactly. And that's what's happening now. You know, obesity.
You
know,
look at, you got ESPN has how many stations?
I'm looking at you.
You know, how many channels on TV does ESPN have? 6, 7
Bre-
plus.
bread and circuses.
Yeah,
Bread and
circuses.
circuses. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what's happening here. You know.
Yeah, so it's a real problem. I'm not sure how you would cure it.
Have
What was
to,
the quote
yeah.
that went something like, you can have a democracy or a republic until the politicians figure out that they can buy people's votes with their own money?
Yeah.
Until
Yeah.
the majority realize that they can vote themselves benefits out of the Treasury.
Who voted
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Blanco?
I'm not sure. The one thing, if I just offer one thought, and I understand what you're saying. I mean, there are things in this country where we're certainly not headed in the right direction, and I don't want to in any way dispute that. But there is one difference when people say all the empires of the past collapsed, and someday it'll happen to the United States. Not necessarily, because all the empires of the past were based on conquest.
Right.
They were like Rome was a city that winds up controlling, you know, the entire known world. Britain's a tiny island that winds up. The United States is its own empire.
Good point.
We're the empire.
Good
We're not
point.
based on foreign countries that are going to throw off our rule and rebel against us. So that's one difference between
That's an excellent point.
Well, again,
And must
still,
not be forgotten.
it'll be destroyed within, which was essentially what Soviet Union did, was destroyed from within. It got so corrupt, I guess the best way of putting it, that you know, then you had rebellion, and you know, whoever you want to give credit for, whether it was the Pope or Ron Reagan, you know, tear down these walls type of thing, and
Yeah.
it was already falling apart at the time. You know, it's
Pope,
just
Reagan, Margaret Thatcher,
Margaret
Lech
Thatcher.
Walesa.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
that's what you want to give credit to.
Yeah,
you know,
and two of them were assassination attempts too. You know, so you knew that there was some power behind there that knew what was happening and
I
said, "Let's
thought
get
one
rid
of the
of
most
these."
powerful photos ever seen was the one of when Pope John Paul II went to visit the guy who tried to kill him in prison. The guy's like stunned. He's like
Yeah.
shaking his hand. And
I always
Yeah.
thought of it as the triple play, because John Paul is elected it's incredible. He's elected in 1978 Margaret Thatcher's elected in 1979, and Reagan's elected in 1980.
1980,
I mean, and they were the three together that brought about the collapse of the Soviet Union. It's
Well,
just
without
amazing.
firing,
It's just amazing.
without
Firing a shot.
Yeah, without having.
Well,
yeah.
they said that Ron Reagan outspent Russia, and that's what happened.
Yeah, there was
Well-
like a poker game. We're bust. You know, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Star Wars missile defense system.
Right.
Yeah.
Really, the Soviets could not match the expense.
Putin's still out there complaining about whatever attempts to defend themselves. You don't like it, you know. Well, tough, you know.
Of something.
They asked Reagan once, what is your policy? They asked him, how do you plan to deal with the Cold War? And he said, very simple. We win, they lose.
Evil empire.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I know because he wasn't an Ivy League guy or whatever. He was,
Yeah, he didn't have
right.
this complicated, very simple.
Yeah.
when all is said and done, a man will be judged by the whole entire career and what happened. And,
Yeah.
Well, you know, the trouble is people make it too complex, and sometimes the complexity is his own worst enemy.
Right. Well, that's. I mean, Reagan had the ability to really connect with the common man, and you know, unfortunately, I think the Republican Party, they've lost that touch. I mean, that's the biggest criticism you hear about Romney. You know, but one of my favorite stories is when Adlai Stevenson, I believe it was he was running for his second attempt to be president, and he had a meeting with Harry Truman at the Conrad Hilton, and Adlai said to, you know, Mr. President, I just don't understand it. I mean, my philosophy connects with the people, and Harry Truman was standing by the window, and he was looking down on Michigan Avenue, and he said, Adlai, you see that guy waiting for the bus? That's the guy you've got to get to be president of the United States.
Yeah.
And you can't get to him.
Yeah.
And that's the and I think, you know,
The common.
right. You have to, and Reagan was really the epitome of being able to do that.
Yeah.
Give him hell. Harry was always great at that too.
Yeah, I thought
Franklin Roosevelt was another
Well,
master,
oh, yeah.
master
Same.
of
Yeah.
appealing.
very
and
fatherly.
very wealthy, and very wealthy
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
yet he had the ability to
Exactly.
communicate with
Yeah.
the average.
Yeah.
Harry had another comment about Adlai Stevenson. He's supposed to have said, he ain't much different than a regular sissy. That doesn't get his
Well, that's another way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He also said about Eisenhower, he said, when I, like the day before he turned over the presidency, he said, poor Ike, he's going to be sitting at this desk tomorrow and he's going to think it's like the Army. He's going to say, do this, do that, and nothing's going to happen.
Nothing's going to happen. Yeah.
Well, it's trouble with a lot of
give an
edicts.
order.
Before I read, a lot of edicts that the president comes out with depends if the people obey him or ignore him. And there's a lot of things that come out of the presidency that are ignored. And so consequently, you can't always count on what.
No, and you can't count on Congress to
Well, Congress, you know, they
Look,
don't know what to
look
go.
at the budget right now. President
budget?
Obama, what budget? It was just defeated 99 to nothing. His own party didn't
Oh,
even
my
pay.
God.
They haven't passed the budget. Now, there's another thing. Congress, when they make mistakes, does anybody ever,
Never.
they make a
Never
mistake.
question.
We pay for it.
Yeah, and then they have a congressional. Well, let's find out what you made the mistake.
I think
Yeah,
Will
good
Rogers
committee.
said, when I make a mistake, it's a blunder. When Congress makes a mistake, it's a law.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, the old saying goes, well, the Congress, we made a it's broken, so give us some more money so we can fix
So
it.
we get, yeah, right, yeah. So we can keep going with this broken
You know,
program.
Even with the big housing bubble, I blame the Congress for a lot of that stuff too, because
Sure.
they all blame the banks and everything else, but the Congress is the first stepping stone.
Yeah.
Admittedly, banks were greedy, and people were greedy.
Yeah.
You know, people are not blameless in this at all.
No. No.
You know, everybody wants to blame somebody else,
Yeah.
and they don't want to take fault of stuff. When you got a house that's worth $200,000, sell for $400,000.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
We had something under the Carter administration, which was later amended with Clinton, called the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977,
Yeah.
which was like, well, it was kind of encouraging you to make all these loans
Yeah.
to people who couldn't pay you to begin with.
Yeah.
So, where we formerly lived in West Englewood, it was like Plywood City, wasn't it? You would go down a block, and I'm not exaggerating, and 8, 10 board ups, FHA on them.
Oh,
Am I right?
yes.
Something that looked really good on paper in Washington, D.C. wound up in reality destroying neighborhoods throughout the United
The
States.
best of neighborhoods in the
Is that in relation to the Great Society?
Right.
But you haven't heard government taking any blame for it.
No.
Never.
The Great Society had
All
done
those greedy
anything.
bankers.
Yeah.
Well, we had the New Frontier, the Great Society. What would he have? The New Deal, the Fair Deal.
Yeah, Johnson,
no.
Johnson, the Great Society, and going to get rid of poverty. And it's
War and
increased.
poverty.
Yeah,
That's it,
yeah, war and
Oh,
poverty.
yeah,
The
it got
raw
worse.
deal.
That's the longest
the
war
raw
in
deal,
history,
The,
not-
the ordeal.
Yeah, it's still.
Yeah, ready? We're
It's a
calling-
losing battle.
Gang, we're getting a signal from the control room. Go.
You are listening to Meet the Chicago Historians. We'll be right back.
Hey!
I gotta get a
How
signal.
are we going? Okay.
I need a drink.
Perfect.
Meet the Chicago Historians will return in just a few moments. Hey friends, Catering 101 makes it easy on yourself. That's the whole point of catering. From graduations, communions, confirmations, to office and family parties, Sorrento's makes it easy and memorable. Use one of our beautiful banquet rooms accommodating up to 200 guests with plenty of free parking. Yep, there's all kinds of parking. There's no parking meters there. Just park your car and walk in the door and you're there. Or ask about our delicious and affordable off-premise catering package. Call Sam or Frank at 847-455-9440 today, and we'll create a perfect party for you. And Friday nights, all-you-can-eat buffet and pasta bar. Join us from 5 until 8:30 p.m. Sorrento's is proud to introduce its new Friday night buffet with pasta bar. Made to order fresh pasta with your choice of vodka, 4 cheese, Alfredo or marinated sauce, plus Sorrento's meatballs and delicious sausage, and a buffet that is bursting with flavors. So be sure you stop in at Sorrento's restaurant, and that Friday night buffet goes for $11.95 for adults, $7.95 for kids 10 and under. Sorrento's Village Restaurant, and they are located at 2318 North Manheim Road. That's in Melrose Park. And their phone number, once again, is area code 847-455-9440. Again, they're located at 2318 North Manheim Road in Melrose Park. 847-455-9440. Give Sam or Frank a call, and be sure you talk to them about the catering for your graduation, communion, confirmation, office parties, wedding parties, or whatever. And don't forget that delicious, and I mean, friends, that delicious Friday night all-you-can-eat buffet and pasta bar. That's from 5 until 8:30, $11.95 for adults and $7.95 for kids under 10. Sorrento's, 2318 North Manheim Road, Melrose Park, area code 847-455-9440. You are listening to Meet the Chicago Historians from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now back to our panel, and here is Rich Lang. Go ahead, Rich.
Now, back to the Chicago historian.
We'll get back from recess. We're all coming back from recess now. We're out on the swings and the teeter-totters. And
Jack, one point I'd like to bring up about NATO
Please.
again, and I only heard this briefly right after the fall of the Soviet Union, before we heard talk and the tensions brought about bringing Warsaw Pact members, even parts like the Baltic states of the old Russian Empire. Why not invite Russia to become a member of NATO? This, I think, was mentioned briefly.
There was
I don't know my
talk about
source.
it. When
Right after the
Yeltsin,
fall, yeah.
when Yeltsin was in power, it's not inconceivable, say, that if Yeltsin had been able to keep away from the alcohol and had stayed in power, I don't want to. You have to give a great deal of credit to Yeltsin. The guy had tremendous courage to stand up on top of that tank and defy the communists. He understood that communism was finished when Gorbachev was still trying to prop it up and reinflate the dummy that had already collapsed. But when Yeltsin was there, and he was more friendly toward the West, and really wanted to be a part of the West, it's not inconceivable that Russia at some point might have become a member. But now, with this attitude of Putin, who's I watch France 24 and the BBC, which is broadcast on Channel 20 here in Chicago, and you get an interesting view of world news. But they also have what's called RT, Russian news. And they are not aware that the Cold War is over. I mean, it is just wall-to-wall hostility to the United States, to the British, to the Germans, the Israelis, the West,
Everyone.
NATO, Wall Street. It's you think you're in a time warp, and you're back to 1985, listening to the same stale anti-American propaganda. So, but you're absolutely right. There was talk at that time that maybe it could reach a point where Russia might become like, maybe not a full member, maybe like an associate member, or have some sort of relationship with NATO.
Right.
It's not going to happen now with Putin there.
Well,
Then we have to remember, too, in history, the momentous decision of de Gaulle to pull France out of NATO. This, I think, was
did.
around 1970. And I'm not aware, really offhand, of the circumstances that France rejoined NATO.
They came back,
They did.
Greece pulled out when there was trouble with Cyprus, and Turkey invaded Cyprus. They briefly pulled their force up. They came back.
France, they didn't completely withdraw from NATO. They remained a member of the organization, but they withdrew all their military forces from NATO command. And that only changed a couple of years ago with Sarkozy. It didn't get one of the reasons I think that Sarkozy did not get the credit for here in America that he should have. He was a very pro-American president of France, more pro-American than any of his predecessors in our time. And he actually restored French military forces to the overall NATO command, which de Gaulle had removed them from, as you say.
Well, de Gaulle has a notorious bad history during the Second World War. Patton and de Gaulle and
yes, FDR, right.
and Montgomery. And Patton used to make his battle plans, and he said if he talked to Montgomery and de Gaulle, the Nazis would know about the next day. So he never made battle plans with those two anymore. And de Gaulle got snubbed, I guess the way of putting it. He was always anti-American because of that. And when he got the power, he decided to be National Socialism. So he wanted to change all the names, so everything had to be French. And
and the language too.
The language
they're
had to be
purifying
changed.
their language.
So it got to be a real problem with some things, because they had Burger King now. I'm not sure how they translated Burger King.
One of the great lines. This is something that John, I'm sure, is familiar with. When de Gaulle made a comment to our ambassador, I think all the Americans should leave France, and the ambassador says, "Oh, you mean the ones in the cemetery too?"
Yeah.
And that shut him up.
The other one similar to that was guy, old World War II veterans walk along the shore, and somebody asked him for his passport. And he didn't have it with him. He said, "Were you here before?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Didn't they ask before?" He said, "Everybody's afraid to come around here."
I landed on the beaches.
De Gaulle was from the ancient province of France called Lorraine. Of course,
Alsace-Lorraine, which had been also German.
And of course, his emblem was the Cross of Lorraine, which is the cross with two crossbars, which had been used by Joan of Arc. And the story is that Winston Churchill, during the war, told Roosevelt, he says, "We all have our crosses to bear. Mine is the Cross of Lorraine."
The
Well, you got to remember, France was a Germanic tribe until the Roman Empire came through there, and they changed the language back to the original French language, and then they switched over back to the Latin language. And you look at the variation from North France to South France, because you had the Vikings or the Northmen up there, which were essentially from Denmark and that area.
Scandinavia.
Yeah. And so consequently you had the big change in languages. It was always funny when I always listened to Robin Hood.
Robin Hood used to talk to you?
Yeah, well,
You're a nice guy.
You're a nice guy. I like
which one?
You look good in
Errol
tights.
Flynn.
right, yeah.
the last one that was
Very good with bow and
Errol
arrows.
Flynn?
no, the last one. Who was the
Richard Green.
no the last? There was another one since that
Oh, there's
time.
been a lot. Kevin
Oh.
Costner.
Kevin Costner. He said I could talk with a better English accent, and I said, how does he know what the English accent was at that time? Because he was He was his accent. His accent, the Germanic accent.
Yeah.
And the Norseman, which was the King Richard, would have had a different accent altogether because it was French Norman.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the language.
His
Nobody knows what the
dialect.
language really was.
Yeah, right.
It was said that the Normans were French, conquered Britain, but the language conquered them.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Because there were far more Saxons. I mean, the Normans were more absorbed into the existing English culture. There were so many more Saxons. Not many Normans came across the Channel with the king. Just the king and his knights and noblemen, and that was it.
Well, the problem I read that the reason they lost in 1066 was the fact that they just got through fighting a different battle. They were essentially exhausted. When William Orange came in to fight 1066, he had an exhausted army, so he had no problem conquering.
Which was the one where a bad storm ruined the crossbows or something like that? Was that the one?
No.
Crossbow was considered to be like the ultimate weapon.
That's
at one
later,
time.
not in 1066. They weren't using crossbows in 1066.
There was one of those, I know which one, one of those European wars in the medieval times where part of the settlement was we conquered you, part of the settlement was we went the right arm of every one of your crossbowmen.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well,
Can't shoot an arrow with one arm, I guess.
One of the reasons that the English language is the richest language in the world is because of all these invasions of England, because you've got French words and Saxon words and the original Celtic population of England. I think that the English vocabulary is 2 or 3 times the size of French or German or Italian, because those languages didn't have this intermixture of languages coming in. That's why, for example, think of how many words we have for a king, a monarch, a sovereign, royalty,
And
regal.
Regent.
And these are all these various words that have been intermingled into it makes it a much richer language.
Yeah.
if you really want to have fun, try to understand a Cockney English.
Oh dear.
I was there 50 years ago, and a guy came up and go.
Yeah.
The guy next to it had
lowered
the guy next to it had to go interpret for him what he wanted.
You know what? You brought out something. In my old age, I look up something. Of course, sometimes I forget what the hell I'm looking up because I see other things. But the basis of words, and it's really, there is a basis. It's either from Greek or French or Old English or something. There's a reason for it. And, and it's fascinating.
Talking about archers, supposedly the origin of the peace symbol, 2 fingers held in a V symbol, resulted as after a battle, the archers would raise their 2 fingers up to show that they still had their fingers to shoot the bow.
Well, the old saying goes with that. The Hungarians always had very strong right arms because they were bowmen and they had some strong bows and they were excellent marksmen.
Interesting you were saying our language, so I'll stay right on that. Just talking about the Levi's and the jeans and the denims we wear, okay? Taking that word. The French town of Nimes is credited with inventing denim. Denimis is how they said it.
Of Nimes, yeah.
Of Nimes.
De Nimes, yeah.
The word jeans originates from the French word for Genoa, jeans, where sailors wore denim trousers But at the end of the day, where it really happened was with Levi's making trousers for miners in San Francisco, and who wrote the blog The Selvage Yard.
Well,
And so
yeah,
that-
Levi
so it
Strauss.
comes through the French town and how they
Sure.
said
Yeah,
to name it,
yeah.
and here we
and it
Yeah,
and
and
it
we
continues.
think
Yeah.
we own it.
Levi,
Yeah, we know
Levi,
denim. you know.
Levi his invention was mostly the riveting.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He had essentially canvas pants, which I don't know how they wore those things, but they were heavy canvas basically, and they would tolerate pumping ore into the pockets. And the old ones used to rip at the seams, and when you put rivets in there, it would stop at least most of the ripping.
Yeah.
And consequently, you always asked for Levi's.
Yeah.
So consequently, Levi's didn't really have a foreign or word from it. It was a name of somebody that came along with it. Now, Levi, I'm not sure where that comes from.
Levi Strauss?
Levi Strauss, I presume.
No,
it was-
Levi, the name. I don't know.
Well, that's an old Jewish name.
Jewish
Levi
name,
was
yeah.
the
The
first name,
Levites.
and
Yeah,
Strauss
right.
The
was
Levites,
the
yeah,
second.
they had a
Yeah.
tribe, the Levites in
Yeah.
ancient Israel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was sort of strange,
Yeah.
Levi Strauss, but that's.
You know, on Pawn Stars just recently, somebody brought in an old Levi jacket, and they gave him, I don't know, $185 for it. And
Sure.
it looked like a
Way
like a
from
rag,
rag,
really.
huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
some
from
of
the
the old
30s
ones-
or
And it was
something.
quite
It's-
dilapidated.
yeah,
too.
yeah. It's
I
original.
better,
you
I
know.
better check my closet.
That's
Some of the old ones,
Never-
if you could find an original, it's worth $100,000 or more.
Look
Yeah.
at that.
Yeah.
But you got to find an original, which
Yeah,
is
right,
almost
yeah.
impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two quick things. A word we're all dealing with at this time of year, the dandelion. The miserable dandelion is a French word.
Right.
Dent de lion, tooth of the lion, because of the jagged
Yeah.
leaves
Yeah.
reminded the French of lion's teeth, so
Yeah.
they became the dent de lion,
Yeah.
dandelion.
Yeah.
The only
And-
problem with dandelions are they grow on your lawn. If they're anywhere else, they're beautiful. Plus they're edible, right?
Yeah.
Well, cliche,
Yeah.
what's the definition of a weed? That's a
Plant-
flower in the wrong place.
Plant where you don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned about bidding, the most expensive item of sports memorabilia in history was auctioned off over the weekend.
I saw
A
that.
jersey from 1920 worn by the greatest baseball player of all time, George Herman Ruth, sold for I think $4.4 million. And for
Was
a-
it from
for a jersey.
1920?
I think they
Yeah.
said 19. I think they said
Yeah,
1920.
Georg Root.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Georg Root.
What
You,
conditions it in?
John, you brought up the peoples in suppressed people in Russia
Sure.
from naturally their years of being held down. What do you think would be the reaction of people if we accepted Cuba again? And after all,
we
they've had
do.
50 years
We
of
do have
that.
our baseball players and boxers.
Yeah.
Yes, I know that, but I mean,
I
do
don't-
you think
I
they'll
don't-
have
I
the
don't
same mindset?
I don't think we'll ever make peace or come to any kind of terms so long as the Castro brothers are
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Well, yes,
I don't think.
I mean, that's
if
my
they're
point.
both
It's
unless
inevitable.
unless his brother would just totally admit that communism has failed. I mean, if, you can't can't really imagine.
Didn't Fidel
Right?
say something like that a couple years
It'll
ago?
take the disappearance of both
Fidel,
of them before
Fidel's
we could
more or
come.
less on his deathbed anyway.
Yeah.
It's just, what's his name, Raul?
Raul,
Yeah.
Raul.
His
who has opened up a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
they had the Pope come there, and they've
Yeah.
opened up a little bit. You know,
Yeah.
a little bit of
would
private
you not
enterprise.
feel that people too would have that madness of us, or do they
No.
see
Oh,
us as a better?
I imagine the Cubans would be thrilled to be back on.
Yeah.
They would. I mean, it'd be
A lot
like,
of,
they probably remember the good times when Americans were coming down there and
Right.
spending all that money.
Well,
you know,
that's it. We
Those
have,
vacation
Anna,
place,
right?
right?
we have
It was a
expensive
vacation
land
like,
out
like
there.
Las Vegas, only more so, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, Havana was kind of like the Vegas of the
It
40s
was.
and
It
50s.
was.
Plus
You
all
see
the-
this in the movies, you know, going down to Havana, you know, for the gambling and
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
saw Havana from a long
Yeah.
distance when we passed there, but that's about all I could say.
I was going to say, even had our gangsters down there, so
Yeah.
it really was America.
Do you remember when Jack Parr did his broadcast from there? It was always, it was scheduled to go before Fidel took over, but Fidel had come in. He had a couple, at least one or two, right from some hotel in
in
right
Cuba and Havana.
and it made me think of these big production numbers. It made me think of this business in Godfather 2 later. You know,
And if we ever came to agreement with them, that they wouldn't have to keep tying these 1958 Chevys together with
Yeah.
baling. They could buy some new Chevrolets
Yeah,
and some
right.
new
Well,
Fords.
That's
you
what
know.
I meant. They've been very
They're still
suppressed.
driving those cars from the 50s. You
It's
still
amazing.
see them on the streets.
Hot rodders will go down there and buy them back.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Well, there was something called the Teller Amendment that caused all this problem. With the Spanish-American War on, someone in Congress named Teller, like Penn and Teller, came up with the amendment saying that we could never annex Cuba as part of our country. That would have been a good state, right?
It could have
No,
been like
it could have
could have been an American. It could have very easily been an American possession, just like
Yeah,
Puerto
like
Rico.
Puerto
or-
Rico.
yeah.
Yes.
Tell
Well,
me,
when,
first of all,
And
you
they
got,
would have actually been. The Cuban people would have been better off.
tell me what the Spanish-American War was about too. We're going to go along in that way.
Well, when Castro first came to power, I believe the New York Times called him the Robin Hood of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
George Washington
yeah.
from his country.
He
George?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
He was a good talker, and a lot of
sure.
movie stars went down there and fought for him, and then he turned his
Well,
back
they
on
did
him.
it.
Flynn did, I know.
They did a gag ad once in a conservative publication when we came to realize what Castro was. And they showed a picture of Fidel Castro, and the caption was, "I got my job through the New York Times."
Whoa.
He was their darling until he kidnapped a reporter or something. Remember that? He kidnapped some reporter, and all of a sudden he was a bad, evil man.
Yeah.
You know he was a minor league ball player in the U.S. too.
I know that he was a ball player. Did he come to the United States?
He was, yeah, in the U.S. Can you imagine that? If he, under other circumstances, he'd be doing the color commentary on the Saturday baseball. You know, baseball been very, very good to me. Not so good.
Or he turned around to the umpire. That was a strike. You're out. You're the one that's out. No umpire.
I remember when they used to have Cuban baseball in the
Yes.
late 50s? I remember
sure.
That was on that same
the
period.
Cienfuegos Elephants. I remember the
Oh.
name of that team. The
Yeah.
Cienfuegos Elephants were one of the teams that were always in the TV guide.
I remember they
Cuban
showed
baseball.
this Castro by this time he'd come to power. They show the audience, and there's one of his boys with the beard. You know, Danny Nenza in our class says they showed a beatnik in the audience. That's one of Castro's people. A beatnik. Beatnik, by the way, for young folks out there. In the 50s, we had some
Beat
cool
generation.
people who drank coffee and played bongos, and these were beatniks. Much better than the hippies who came along later.
And the old coffee houses.
You can see him in old episodes of Peter Gunn. Watch the old
Yeah.
Peter
That's
Gunn.
right.
I went to a coffee house.
Yeah.
I remember a coffee house they had in Des Plaines. It used to be an old church.
They used to take over. In fact, this what's the fellow's name? Richard just passed away. He ran the Quiet Night in Chicago, and one of his buildings was a former synagogue in the old town neighborhood. Really, So they, why? Because buildings were available.
Yeah, well, nobody else
What do you
wanted
do
them.
with an old church?
Yeah.
When the parishes.
Oh, that's-
Parishioners all move away, and so
Well, the problem comes in now is some churches want new churches, but they don't want the old church. They want to build a new church.
Yeah.
So they want a movie palace.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the
Yeah.
movie palace.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
AKA Forest
Yeah.
Park Theater, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something came to me, Ken, when you mentioned, how good America is, and we can't forget that either. I was thinking, like now with the NATO story going on, and it is history, we're part of history, that as a kid I can remember anything that was wanting to impress was all of us having our flag out on the porch of the house or wherever you could hang it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking possibly that could have been a, you might not know where you're at, but this is how we feel about our country or something. And of course, June 14th being Flag Day.
Flag Day.
I can remember you could run and buy a dime flag, but everybody had a flag.
You know
And
what?
Yeah.
isn't that something that
Yeah.
has
One
we
of
failed
my
at?
one of my favorite comments. I tend to remember things that have an effect on my position and how I feel about the United States. And I'm known as being a very patriotic person, wearing an American flag lapel pin, displaying the flag. But and it's not my comment, but I use it. I say my government when it's right, my country always.
See,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That's a great.
Oh, yeah,
It's
don't
a
forget
great thought too.
Memorial Day is coming up now, and that used to be
There
called
you-
Decoration Day.
There you
Yeah.
are.
You know,
Yes.
there are various names along the period of time because you had VJ Day, VE Day.
Right.
All those things sort of got consolidated into Memorial Day.
Politically correct too has gotten very much of kind of skimming over things. The words had meaning before, you know. But I just thought that would have been it might have said more than all the parties we gave and all.
We just passed VE Day, of course,
There
May
you
the
are.
7th. I always think of it as May the 7th because that's when the Germans surrendered to Eisenhower at Reims in France. The following day, it was agreed that it be done formally the following day so that the Russians could cash up and they could have a surrender ceremony in Berlin. But to me, the real surrender was when they surrendered to Eisenhower in the West. But we don't even, that day passes in the United States. We don't pay any attention to it.
Really?
But the Russians still celebrate it like the war happened the year before last.
Right.
Huge parades and
Well,
speeches.
same thing with May Day, May 1st, which originated here in Chicago.
Chicago, sure.
You know,
Because
it was the
of Haymarket.
Very
Haymarket,
big. The riot.
It's not really a riot,
killing
massacre.
was
Yeah.
done and so
Well, that was depending on who you talk to.
Yeah,
because-
whose side you're on.
Yeah, it was always a question of who did what because the fact is that they claimed that none of the protesters had weapons, and the police got killed by gunfire in many
Somebody
cases.
threw
It was a bomb.
It was
There
a
was a
bomb.
bomb, too. A bomb,
Somebody
too.
threw a bomb.
Dynamite.
Bomb,
There was
but
also,
there was
police were
also
killed by
fire.
gunfire.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, there were different editorials called for using dynamite against the workers, and they were assembling for what, a 40-hour work week, was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a
8
labor
hours.
dispute.
And
Yeah,
also,
it was a
yeah,
labor dispute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
McCormick Works. There had
Well,
been,
the police were told not to go there.
well, at Haymarket,
Yeah.
but
Because they're supposed to be peaceful demonstrations, leave them alone, but they decided to go.
but you still don't throw a bomb.
No.
You know,
Well, nobody else
they
threw
could-
the bomb.
they could have listened to the police.
Is
and
it
then-
really reasonable to tell the police, well, you can't come here because we're, I mean, the police, their job is to maintain order.
Yeah.
How do they know it's going to be a
Send me home. I'll go home.
Well,
Yeah, right.
With
Yeah,
my family.
Well, we're gonna have a peaceful
this is from
demonstration.
above. This
you
was
know.
from
Well,
above.
That
They
was
were
Maybe
told.
will.
yeah, Mayor Harrison told it. Because he
Yeah.
was there.
One trouble with peaceful demonstrations is, and one of the old veterans told me years ago, you get enough people together, I don't care if they're a bunch of nuns, if you get too many, you got a mob. Because people
Yeah.
lose their individuality.
Yeah.
They do things they normally wouldn't do.
Yeah.
And we'll get more about that in the next segment because I think we can speak with some authority on that stuff.
You know, Jack. You know where you can prove that? You get a bunch of high school kids on a bus or an L train or something, and all of a sudden they're starting to act giddy and they're slapping each other around. They're running up and down the aisles, etc.
Yeah.
They
And
wouldn't
try
do
to kill
that.
the other guy.
Exactly. They wouldn't do it. They want to show off, etc.
Yeah.
I saw it myself going to basketball games, etc. And you say, "What the hell are you doing? Calm down."
Well, it's energy.
Mob psychology. Yeah.
It's energy that is what
Yeah.
They got to use it up, type of thing.
Yeah. Right.
When
Yeah.
they get 30, when they get about our age, they don't run
Oh,
around.
you know. The trouble with youth is it's wasted on the young. That's not my own, by the way.
Yeah.
And
Just like-
sometimes,
It's just like vacation time. It's just, when you can't afford it, you got the energy. When you can't afford it, you don't have the
You
energy.
don't have the energy. Yeah, that's right. That's why. So you go on vacation or do what you can do while you can, because
Yeah.
once you lose your health, you can't.
Some of
can't
these
do anything.
vacations, you get on there, you got so many things planned, you're glad to get home. So
Yeah, right.
Rest up from vacation.
Yeah, right.
I'll tell you a cute thing about this American part of our life. Because my brother is here witnessing our show, the radio programs used to end with God Bless America and whatever was our national anthem. And now sometimes those shows ended at midnight. And my brother would hear it off of the radio and get up right out of bed and stand with his hand on his chest. We were very, very
Sure.
patriotic
Yeah.
and very involved, with our country. And
I do it.
During-
I don't mind telling. When they play it at the ball game, if I'm watching it on TV,
I mean,
I don't
you
feel
know,
comfortable.
but I
being
mean, I
seated.
remember
you
as a
can't-
little
no.
kid, that
Yeah.
he had that
Yeah.
force about him,
Yeah.
And then you mentioned World War II. My mom was, every block had all the fellows who went to the war, and
Had the flag with
yeah.
the
we'd
memorial
have
there.
their
Yeah, right.
name on the corner,
Yeah.
and we would, dedicate, we would send them supplies or write to them on then onion paper.
Yeah.
Which every other word was cut out by the time they got
Censors.
it. Dear and goodbye, you know. So, you know, we were really a part of all of that.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, one thing
I think it's great.
One thing I just want to mention. Everybody here knows that for 10.5 years, I was station manager and chief engineer for WJJG. And the very first day, Joe Gentile, God rest his poor soul, and how I miss him, he came up to me and he says, the one thing that I demand at this radio station, in the morning when you sign on, and at nighttime when we sign off, you will play the Star Spangled Banner.
Wow.
He says, and God bless the poor engineer that doesn't play it.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, you remember that, Jeanette?
Oh, yeah.
And every morning, and he was there, and he'd be in his apartment listening to see if we played the Star Spangled Banner.
And he would come in his pajamas.
That's right. and when I was on duty, when I would open the station up, not only would I play the Star Spangled Banner, but I also played God Bless America.
Yeah.
Opening and closing when I was on the board.
Yeah.
He was a true believer.
He was a
That
true
was
believer,
always
and
Kate
he
Smith's
probably had
recording.
as rich a soul as anyone. If anyone ever met the man, he made his fortune, and he shared it with us with his radio station. And it was kind of like his toy train set, but
Sure.
God, it had nothing like it. So anyway, that brings us up to another break time.
You are listening to Meet the Chicago Historians. We'll be right back.
Meet the Chicago Historians will return in just a few moments. Hey friends, how are the tires on your vehicle? Do you need motor oil? Do you need transmission fluid, power steering fluid, or antifreeze? How about the wiper blades? Are they in good sharp condition? Is the washer fluid in your tank full? How good is your battery? Do you need to replace light bulbs? Well, the place to go to pick up all these items is at Berkeley Auto Supply, which is located at 5237 St. Charles Road in Berkeley. Stop in and see Tom, and he will help you get any part or supply you might need for your vehicle. Tom at Berkeley Auto Supply has everything you need for your vehicle. He has every tool, part, and supply you might need, from the top of your roof to the bottom of the chassis, and from front bumper to rear bumper. You can call Tom at area code 708-544-8350, and they are located at 5237 St. Charles Road in Berkeley. Tom's hours are Monday to Friday from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, and on Saturday from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the evening, and he's even open on Sunday to help you if you need something for your vehicle from 10 o'clock until 3 o'clock. That's Berkeley Auto Supply, which is located at 5237 St. Charles Road. They are east of Wolf Road by just a few blocks and west of Mannheim Road about 2 miles, and they're located on the south side of St. Charles Road. Once again, Berkeley Auto Supply. Call Tom at 708-544-8350 for parts, tools, and supplies. It's Berkeley Auto Supply, 708-544-8350. And I guarantee you, you won't be sorry. Just call Tom and tell him that you heard this on Meet the Chicago Historians, and trust me, he will take very, very good care of you. That's Berkeley Auto Supply, 5237 St. Charles Road in Berkeley. And you are listening to Meet the Chicago Historians from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now back to our panel, and here is Rich Lang. Go ahead, Rich.
Back to the Chicago Historians.
Back to us. We're having such a good time, folks. Now, we got all this NATO business.
Yeah.
Talk about current. To me, just having it here, you had to wonder about who was thinking ahead here. As much as people like to criticize Old Man Daley, I mean Richard J. Daley, they knew he had a little bit of foresight. When they knew that we were going to have that 1968 Democratic National Convention here, at the time the police department was down quite a bit. So for that first couple of years, before that, say 1965 through 68 or whatever, that's when it was, they built the police department up. As my friend Tom here can back me up on this one, there were probably more people came on during that time than any other time in history. It was probably the biggest buildup. And they knew that they were going to need more police than they had. So they at least made some plans ahead. Now this, it was like, well, let's have NATO here, and bing, there we are. Could you imagine Richard J. Daley appealing to the communities around to give us police because we don't have enough to handle all this? I mean, that would be been against his pride, for one, common sense.
Yeah.
I know one thing, and I imagine Ken would know more about this, but I know, having been with the town of Cicero, it was always my understanding that the Cicero Fire Department and the Chicago Fire Department had a very close relationship. That Fire Commissioner Quinn had given orders once, if Cicero ever needs help, send them whatever they want. This was known in the Cicero Fire Department, that if we ever had a fire where we couldn't handle, Chicago, it was orders from the top, give them whatever they need. And I think Cicero also would reciprocate if they needed anything Chicago needed. They knew that if they needed an additional engine to come and stand by in a house, well, that Cicero would do that. So, I mean, there was that cooperation with our one town. Whether that existed elsewhere, I don't know.
It didn't at the time so much, although we were covering Lincolnwood because they didn't have a fire department. But I talked to, remember I mentioned John Rowley, who was like the civil defense director.
Right.
And it was all, we at least 3 on occasions, and it was always funny because they say, okay, John, what do you want? He'd say, a box alarm, which is 4 engines, 2 hook and ladders. And he'd say, a snorkel. Yeah, you got it. You know, it was a standing order. Give him, what he wanted,
Wait. But we have a phone call?
Ooh.
Oh.
Wow, good.
Must be a wrong number.
Hello.
Yeah, you're listening to WJ. Oh, you're not. You're listening to Meet the Chicago Historians.
We have a guest on the line, a new member of
you don't say.
Of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, and that is our pal, Don Figuarelli. Hi, Don.
Hello, Jack.
Hello, Don.
Yeah, hi, Jack. How are you? How the guys doing? How guys and gals doing today?
Hi, Dan.
Hello.
We're doing just fine so far. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. Good. I've got a question for them. You're talking about events that came to Chicago. Okay. Ask the guys and the gals there if they remember, what was it called? The World's Fair or the Chicago Expo, about 1933, I think. And how long did it run? What time of the year? Where was it held? And are there any remaining, buildings to show that they had this either Chicago Expo or World's Fair, I think it was called?
Let's see now.
There's one place that still is quite viable. It's downtown. The facade for the old Heidelberg was 1933, and now it's a tea house. So it's been changed quite a bit. It's basically next door to the Oriental Theater.
Yeah. Does anyone know what that was? Anyone that?
Sure. Yeah.
First,
Ken? Heidelberg?
It was called, the Century of Progress, Don, and it was held in 1933-34, and it was celebrating 100 years. Chicago became a town in 1833, so they're celebrating 100 years. It was on the lakefront from Roosevelt Road to about 37th Street, long, narrow strip of land there, including Northerly Island.
Which is our formerly, now destroyed airfield, right?
Yes.
Which was?
Meigs Field, yeah. Well, there was no Meigs Field then.
No.
And it was a success. Major Lennox Lohr was the managing director, and he later went from there to the Museum of Science and Industry. It was a success. It buoyed up people because it was during the Depression years, you know. And like all typical Chicago adventures, it made money, you know. They paid off all their gold bonds,
Even
as they
above
call
board.
them. Pardon?
Even above board, right?
Even above board. And it was great. I was out there because I was only 2 years old. And my parents took pictures.
Bless
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I know it was a success. My mom and dad met there.
Is that right?
They started going together after that.
Oh.
One of the unknown benefits
Yeah,
of
right.
the Chicago world.
Byproduct.
My dad was there, I know that, but I'm not sure about my mother.
We had a man in our Kiwanis Club who lived to be 97. His name was Charlie Zellebor, and when I knew him, when he was quite along in age, he had worked as a carpenter putting together the booths and stands and platforms at the Century of Progress in 1933.
Yeah, and it gave employment to a lot of people, a lot of businesses out there, and a lot of souvenirs. Anything that was sold out there would have either a stamp or a decal or a metal, identification tag on it that was from the Century of Progress. And it also showed people what the future was going to look like. You know, homes that were with electricity now,
No more outbuildings?
Huh? No
more
more
outbuildings?
Not
I
not
think
really.
they had a couple porcelain buildings there, too. That
They
were
had
out there.
porcelain, steel, everything. And,
Some automobile assembly lines.
assembly lines,
Yellow.
and it was
Yeah, Jack.
yeah.
And in addition, now this is Don with the sports show. In addition to the fair, Arch Ward was the Tribune sports editor who used to. I think he originated that in the Wake of the News column, I believe. Now he came up with a couple ideas in addition. One was the baseball All-Star game, which was
Exactly.
supposed to have been a one-shot deal. It was going to be regular in Comiskey, meant to be at Comiskey Park in 1933, and it was, of course, a success and became part of the tradition. Became part of the whole tradition of our major leagues. Secondly, we had what we call the college all-star game. Can everybody remember that with football?
Sure, absolutely.
Every year was actually what it really came out to be usually was the best seniors graduated from college would play the NFL champions is what it came
Right,
down to. And we used to go to several of those, Tom or so, we used to go out to those the last days of them.
Yeah.
And one more thing that's not remembered too well, in 1934 at Soldier Field, the Tribune promoted was one of the last probably great wrestling championship matches was Jim Londos defending his title against Ed Strangler Lewis, who of course was aging by then. He was well past his prime, but they had a great turnout. It was boxing on the card too. Someone I know, as a matter of fact, anyone know Leo Rodak? Leo Rodak was the world featherweight champion, like 1939-41 era. He had a son on the job on the fire department.
Oh.
Who was, I don't know, I think he was a lieutenant later. But anyway, I used to see him downtown all the time.
Yeah.
He was on the supporting card, but it was really well received, and it was a big moneymaker for Tribune Charities. So
You know what else I was going to say?
No, I say
Yeah,
another event that ties in with they came to Chicago. We've kind of referred to the 1968 convention. One of the great battles with the demonstrators took place at Michigan and Balbo.
Yeah.
And the reason we have a Balbo
Balbo.
Drive in Chicago is because in 1933, General Italo Balbo of the Italian Air Force flew his squadron of seaplanes to Lake Michigan, and they landed there and were toasted and feted and honored. And it was a huge event. And that in his honor, you have Balbo Drive, and there's also a pillar. There's a monument on the lakefront that is still there commemorating his arrival, which is fascinating because it says right on there, in the year of our Lord, 1933,
Jack.
the 11th year of the fascist
still have the
era.
air here?
right.
yeah.
You want me to wait, or?
Mussolini.
You want to hang up, Don, or you want to go?
No, I mean, what do you want me to do?
Well, we'll plug your own show now. Let's hear a little plug for your show. You're doing a show in 2 days, right?
Yeah, right.
It's the Donna Sports is a show.
What about that question I asked you?
Which one?
I just asked you. Can they remember what it was called? Either the World's Fair or Chicago Expo?
You can't hear us? The Century of Progress.
Yeah, it was called Century of Progress?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought you could hear all this.
Yeah.
You have to listen and get all the answer later.
Right, I know.
Century of Progress, and it was extended to 1934 also.
That long?
Yeah.
Oh, my
2
gosh.
years.
You ran a whole year?
It was on the lakefront.
2 years.
Part of it was what is now Northerly Island. Used to be Meigs Field there, remember?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
By McCormick Place.
Okay.
By
No, I
McCormick
didn't know
Place,
that.
yeah.
And okay, it ran for over a year, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And
Was it summer?
is there any remnants of it now at all, like a statue or
Well,
something
you
there?
said old Heidelberg?
Yeah, old Heidelberg. You go downtown to next door to the Oriental Theater. You got that facade there, and it's a tea house right now.
Yeah. There was a German restaurant?
It was a German restaurant at the time. That's the only that facade was moved from the campus to down at the World's Fair or the Columbia Exhibition or the
Century of Progress.
Century of Progress to
Yep.
Randolph Street.
Yeah, it's about number 14 West Randolph.
Yeah, on
It was
Randolph.
Ronnie's Steakhouse for many years.
Yeah.
Oh, that's, yeah, I know that well.
Yeah. Also, Jack.
Want to hang up?
Yeah.
Okay, there.
But
Thanks,
where
Dad.
was it? By Meg's Field, did you say?
Yeah, up that
Yeah.
way, in south. Yeah, toward where
There.
McCormick Place is.
He came here.
I'll be darned. All right, thanks a lot, Jack.
Bye.
Bye.
The other thing to go back to Balboa was the fact that his descendants came here, and they said it was the only monument to Balboa that they found.
Yeah.
Because Italy has no memorial there at all.
No, even in Rome, there's no record of them. But I was going to say also, you mentioned we were talking about all those houses. Most of them, or not all, were saved, and they're out in like Miller Beach in Indiana.
Right.
They were floated on barges and
Beverly Shores.
Beverly Shores, right, Tom? Yeah.
Yeah, they're
so there are
historic
some
monuments there, and they're trying to restore them now because after how many years? 80 years.
Almost 80 years, right?
You know, they start deteriorating. Lake Michigan's not kind to those things, so.
And the other thing too is there's a lot of memorabilia out there. You've shown us a couple of postcard copies that you had there.
I think my dad got
badges and tickets and souvenirs
and
things.
all
Sally
kinds
Rand
of.
was here?
Sally Rand was there.
Sally Rand,
Her ostrich feathers are on display at the Historical Society. Well, when they do have some sort of a display, she donated them. And I suppose if you looked around, you would find different.
It was the trouble is not well as known as the 1893 World's Fair.
City.
White City.
Yeah.
And White City's interesting, the fact that Museum of Science and Industry has almost a yearly show, a virtual tour of White City. And it's quite good. It's we go there and we find it fascinating, even though we've seen it most of it before. There's some improvements because they're still trying to lay out what was there and stuff like that. So they got some footprints, but they don't always know what all the buildings look like, so they're trying to resurrect
The
it.
Chicago History Museum, the old Historical Society, has a display of the White City, as I recall. One of those little tableaus that they show the lake and the monuments.
All the buildings and one of the things, Al, why the artifacts from the Columbian Exposition were all heavy, like metal, wooden, glass, etc. From the Century of Progress, it's more ephemera. It's more postcards and paper, magazine, stuff like that do not survive that well. But things from the Columbian Exposition, which there isn't a hell of a lot out there. But as far as I'm concerned, but
my dad's archives, I got photographs.
Yeah.
And these two postcards, which surprised me a little bit because I forgot I had them.
Yeah.
And
keep them.
Yeah.
They are good.
And they're still in great shape. I guess they were basically hidden away, so
I'm a director of the Fire Museum. We just had a lady come in here at the last open house, and she brought a fire hydrant, which was she claims from Jackson Park, from the museum, and from the Columbian Exposition. And Al had taken a picture of the fire hydrant that's in their museum. Has their Yesteryear Street, It's identical.
Right.
So whether it's the same hydrant or
it's a twin to that one.
or a
It's
twin,
still there.
It's still there.
Yeah, I don't know. How
And
she
it
got
could be, and it's Chicago, designed their own hydrants. It's a Krieger. It's not a Krieger hydrant, but we found it does have Chicago threads, which are different. They're not national standard. So it was definitely
Yeah, the only thing I
used.
figured out is they must have had some on a campus nearby, and it was salvaged, and somehow else you got it.
Well, Jackson Park during the fair might have had their own water supply. No doubt they did, and so they
had
bought their own hydrants rather than Chicago. You were going to say something?
My recollection is that the what I think the best episode they ever did of The Untouchables, the one that dealt with Zangara and the plot to assassinate Mayor Cermak.
Hate assassin or something.
Yeah. And winds, of course, the Zangara who's aiming at Franklin Roosevelt and kills Mayor Cermak. But it seems to me they make a reference in that program in which Cermak is talking about the century of progress coming up in 1933. Was Mayor Cermak deeply involved in the planning and preparation for it? I mean, have you ever come across?
I don't.
It sounds like something a mayor would have promoted, for the image of the city. But
but
I've never heard him connected with it.
No, to begin with, it was at that particular time the South Park commissioners owned the land. And one of the things that happened, that was in 33, and of course the planning started in 29.
They had to be planning it before then,
yeah,
so he could have been involved.
The Dawes brothers, Charles and
sure.
Rufus, his brother, they were involved in raising the money, and they needed money. And then in 34, the Park District, then the three park districts in Chicago, West, South, and Lincoln Park, amalgamated. And if you see their logo, they've got the year 34. So they had to renegotiate all the leases again. But the city of Chicago, other than maybe with fire, police, fire department was definitely involved.
So it wasn't like Mayor Daley promoting the Olympics.
No,
it wasn't that kind of the involvement of the mayor as the spearhead.
No, I don't. And don't forget, Cermak came in 31,
right.
So the planning had been going on for a number of years. And it's interesting. He is buried, I think, on like Chicago's birthday or so, March 4th of 33. He was shot around the 1st or something like that. March 4th, March 5th. So he really didn't see the fair.
No. He was assassinated early in 33 before FDR. Where is Mayor Cermak buried?
In Bohemian National Cemetery.
Is he? Is he? Okay.
Yeah, Foster.
Very big crypt.
Yeah,
there
Foster
was always a
Pulaski.
question of three scenarios with Cermak's death. Was it assassinating Cermak? Were they trying to assassinate Roosevelt and missed? Or did Cermak actually sacrifice himself? It was never answered.
The newspaper account says, "I'm glad it was."
Glad it was me.
Yeah, I know.
They
But
put that right
knows.
there. Would say it ain't so, Joe, and what else?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
It's a nice story. You'd rather believe. I mean, people say, "Oh, that didn't."
Yeah.
I'd rather believe it.
I'd rather believe it too.
Yeah.
When the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
Print the legend.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
When
That's
you compare the century of progress in White City, like Ken said, you remember Sally Rand, and of course White City.
Little Egypt.
Yeah.
Little Egypt was the counterpart.
That was it, yes. And the White City, of course, it's tragedy with Holmes.
H.H. Holmes,
Yeah.
Who was really named Mudgett, some name like that.
Yeah.
With all the murders he committed, and I think the two, the contrast of what it was bringing out was progress, or the other buildings. The White City was built by Burnham and Rood and wonderful Sullivan, all of them.
It was also the beginning of Florence Ziegfeld, the great Broadway impresario. He starts off running a sideshow.
That's right.
He was running
Strongman.
Strongman.
Well,
Was a
the other
Sandow.
Also the beginning of Cracker Jack.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Jack took the
Linotype, lots of stuff.
Right.
But the other thing was the fact that people saw how pretty a city could look,
Yeah.
and they started demanding that their cities get cleaned up. So it had a national-wide or even worldwide effect in many respects. The fact that they decided they didn't have to live in slums anymore.
No.
Or it didn't work that quickly, but
it gave them. Can you
evidence
imagine someone who comes from a medium-sized city and has never seen like electric street lights before, or gas lamps, and all of a sudden at nighttime this whole city just lights up, the beautiful White City. Said, "Hey, Ma, we got to have this in our house."
And that did start progress.
It did start progress.
Was that DC or AC at the time? I don't remember.
That's a good question. Was it direct current?
DC, AC came after.
That was
direct current.
What was his name?
Nikola Tesla.
Yeah, Tesla and Edison.
Edison was it, but the big guy on there was what they call him a crook. What was his name?
Insull, you mean?
Insull.
Samuel Insull.
Yeah, he was the one who pushed the AC. And there was a lot of DC in Chicago up until the 50s or 60s, I think.
He was a big mogul with People's Gas and Edison.
And Edison, he was
built
president of both.
Built what I
he
used to
built
call
the,
the Kemper Insurance Building.
He built the Opera House, those White would sing
right.
like in Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
So,
he also turned it back on the Chicago River.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It
Yeah.
was like his chair facing away from the city.
Yeah, basically, he did a lot of things except that.
He was Edison's right hand.
I guess he was
Yeah.
a little too. He ended up broken, dead. You know, when he was died, he was broke.
Oh wow!
I think they picked his pockets.
Anyone that's interested in that subject, that book "Devil in White City" is a really interesting
I read
book
it.
because it covers both the historical aspect and the difficulty of putting the fair together, and that it also touches on the murders.
Yeah, that was Karen Abbott.
Right.
I went to one of her books signings, and she's talked about it a little bit. She came here, Chicago, because her aunt disappeared. And she was hoping to come here to Chicago and see if she could trace her aunt.
Wow.
And I don't know if she ever did or not. I never got that answer.
You hate to give credit to a murderer, but what a mind this man had
Right.
as
Just
far as his
misdirected.
plan.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
And it worked. I mean, you know.
I haven't got the book, but I got the Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
I got the. I got it on CD, and I got the CD. It was
I
much
just
easier
picked
to
up a
read.
paperback and I paged through it. Of course, you know, I know both stories fairly well, but it's
a
just
good read,
It's a
yeah.
good read, and it also shows you how loose we would say today how people were, because people
Right.
disappeared and they didn't know what the hell
That's
happened
right.
to
Well,
them. You know,
exactly.
did they get married? Did they move out into the country? Did they go
Right.
back home?
Right.
Nobody
Record
knows.
keeping
Right.
was atrocious.
Yeah.
That was the.
Well, the other thing that was sort of funny was they got involved with the shooting of Marshall Field at the time too.
Yeah, well, that was a little bit later, but it
Yeah.
was 6 or so.
Yeah,
That
it
was the era.
Everly
Hinky
Sisters.
Dink Kenna and
Yeah.
all the Bathhouse John
Bathhouse
Coughlin.
John, they were there
Was he the guy
forever.
with the weatherman on Channel 2?
No, that was,
Yeah.
that was a
Coughlin.
different. That was a different
Well,
Coughlin. That
those
was Google.
were the days when there were 2 aldermen.
Yeah.
That's
for
right.
every ward.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
what a scary thought that is.
Well, actually, what the thing was
You
on
got 2
that.
for the price of 1.
Yeah, right.
At that time, though, what they did is they wanted to get 1 alderman per ward. So what they did is they made the other alderman the committeeman.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So
That's the job you want to have anyway.
Yeah, that was the one that made the money. It's non-paying, but I don't know.
Yeah, right.
They all
It's not
fight
even
for
a
it.
governmental job.
no, you
that's
vote.
where the power
you
is.
vote
Yeah,
for it. That's
power
where the
is.
power is.
Another interesting thing about the Columbian Exposition was it was the first time that Europeans and the British found out that there was a big America beyond the East Coast. They were familiar with New York, Philadelphia, Boston and Washington.
Yeah.
This brought the world to Chicago,
Chicago.
and they learned about how enormous the country was beyond just the Atlantic
Yeah.
seaboard. And it was kind of a entry of the United. If you think about it, this is just before the Spanish-American War, just before America really becomes a world power. Teddy Roosevelt, the Panama Canal, the whole world was coming to Chicago in 1893 and seeing how much America had achieved, what the size of our cities, the technology. So it does have a historical tie-in.
And here was a fire only a few years earlier.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
think that the
20
city had
years
been
after-
rebuilt after this fire.
20 years, yeah.
which destroyed it.
But you also got to look at the Vikings came over on boats
Yeah,
that they brought over, and the
Yeah.
boats still exist. And
yeah.
Lincoln Park is one?
yeah, that
It
was
was in Lincoln Park.
Yeah, they
It's
moved out
in
seven-
storage
it's
somewhere.
Geneva.
Yeah.
Geneva. They
In
got
Geneva,
it,
yeah.
and they're trying to rebuild it.
They actually crossed? again?
Yeah, in that boat, yeah.
Oh,
Larson. In
no
fact, Larson
motors?
was the captain.
Yeah, they had a big story about that. It was quite great.
Yeah, I remember the boat in Lincoln Park. You
Yeah,
know,
I was there, and Lincoln Park threw them out, and
Yeah.
meandered around, and now it ended up in
What's wrong with us,
Geneva.
you know? Here's a city. We actually was tossed out of Lincoln Park. We had the U-505. We had the Silversides. Or was
That was
Dock.
thrown out,
Sure,
too.
absolutely.
Now, all of a sudden, someone decides they should be paying a mooring fee for being there.
Yeah, right.
There's a non-profit organization,
Yeah.
kind of almost like an amateur
Yeah.
museum thing.
You
I think
gotta
it
get
was,
some
was
money
it
out
during
of
the
this.
Yeah.
Byrne or during the Washington administration. So right next to it, here's this Columbia Yacht Club. They don't pay a cent. They're
Yeah.
still there. So one day, tugboat came along and took it away to Muskegon, Michigan.
Yeah, where I guess it's still on
It is
display.
as
It's
far as I
on
know.
display. and
The
they got a big-
505, of course, is.
I haven't been there, but it got a big show, from what I
Yeah.
understand, that they make
Yeah.
out of it. So it's a real attraction for
Yeah.
Muskegon.
And
Don't you think this, the ending of our NATO, back to NATO,
Yes,
will
ma'am.
impress dignitaries and peoples who are their guests in it as to we don't have to tell, you know, we're known as the, golden streets when you come to America?
Paved with
There you
gold.
go. That when they do look around, we all live fairly decently, and you know, it's a beautiful city, and it's got the greatest
and we're
skyline,
friendly. We're friendly,
greatest, you know. But we're not making it up. Here it is. We couldn't build it in 2 weeks.
You bring up a good point, because when you're locally and you know, day in and day out, we know of all the minuses and what you have to deal with, but you look around, you have people, visitors coming. For one thing, they're amazed that people are as friendly as they are.
Yeah.
You go to some place bigger than New York or somewhere, and it's like, they don't even want to be, they're just grumpy to you.
Yeah.
Where's the so-and-so? What? You know, they jump on you.
Yeah.
They don't even mean to be.
Don't
That's the way
bother
it is.
me. Yeah.
Chicago's very friendly.
Yeah, yeah.
Very friendly.
You know what else I was going to say? Talking to guy was very active around the Holy Family Parish on Roosevelt Road, and he's got his own business there, and he's been dealing with some exporters from Germany. You know what he told them? And they were here like in the summer. He said, "Come on back in the wintertime when it's snowing here." And he said it's a different city. And so I hope all those, Jeanette, I hope
Didn't
all those
snow last year.
Yeah, I know, very little, but
our luck.
But I hope the NATO people come back in the wintertime. I hope Mayor Emanuel says, "You come back in the wintertime, and we'll be ice skating on Millennium
Y'all
Park."
come back now, you hear?
Yeah, y'all come back.
That was my point.
Yeah.
That we don't. It
Yeah.
talked.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't have to say anything.
We got a right to
No,
grumble,
it's
don't we,
here.
differ?
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
mean everybody.
I'm glad you brought us back to NATO, because we're going to get back there after the next break, which is due right now.
Uh-oh, here we go.
You are listening to Meet the Chicago Historians. We'll be right back.
Goes fast.
Hey, friends, how's the roof on your house? You know, it's getting into that time of the year where we're going to have some rain, some hail, and you got to make sure that the roof on your house is in real good shape. And you can do that by calling Besh Brothers Roofing at area code 630-616-1359. Mike Besh will come out in his shiny, beautiful red pickup truck with ladders strapped to the top, and his name is on either side of the vehicle, Besh Brothers Roofing. He'll come out and take a real good look at your roof and advise you what you need done and go from there. He'll give you an estimate, and then you decide what you want to do. But I wouldn't wait. I call right now. Area code 630-616-1359. Have Mike come out, look at your roof, and make sure that your roof is in good condition. Because you know what will happen? If you have a leaky roof, that means that your attic, your crawl space, will get wet, and you have all kinds of mildew, and that is very bad. And will also damage the ceiling in your rooms downstairs, your bedroom, your living room, your front room, your kitchen, wherever. And you don't want double expense, because you know what happens when the ceiling gets wet? It gets real wet, and then it'll collapse and crack, and you have double expense. So therefore, make sure that your roof is in real good condition. Call Michael Besh, Mike Besh, at area code 630-616-1359. And once again, Mike will come out. His vehicle is well marked, so you know that he is authorized or he is legal. No pranks will be taken care of. And he'll look at your roof, and then, like I said, he'll give you an estimate, and you go from there. So for this type of weather now, where we're going to be getting into all kinds of rain, and last week we had a hailstorm, and you want to make sure that your roof is in good condition, don't have double expense. Eventually, you're going to have to get that roof fixed anyways, so why not do it right away and save the ceilings in your house? So that's, again, is Best Brothers Roofing, 630-616-1359. Best Brothers Roofing. And you are listening to Meet the Chicago Historians from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now back to our panel and Rich Lang. Go ahead, Rich.
Now back to the Chicago Historians.
Yes, we were talking about the West. Let's just finish off on that. You got to remember a TV program called Shenandoah Valley. That was the Old West.
Sure.
Right across the Appalachians. They had the cowboys and Indians and all that other stuff there. And as the world progressed, kept on moving. We were in the West.
We were, sure. Chicago was the West.
Louisiana Purchase.
Yeah.
That was the Old West. And then it got to Northwest Territories, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, yeah, it kept moving. You know, what did they call it, John? Manifest Dynasty?
Manifest Destiny, yeah.
Or Destiny, rather.
It was America's destiny to extend from shore to shore, from ocean to ocean.
Was to go all the way to the Pacific.
Further west from
North Pole to South Pole.
Yeah, that was what William Seward wanted.
Yeah.
William H. Seward envisaged the United States eventually absorbing Canada, Central America. He thought the United States would eventually become the entire Western Hemisphere.
Yeah,
and he used to talk to Lincoln. In fact, one of the reasons he was interested in buying Alaska was part of his idea.
We're back.
Yeah.
That was Seward's Folly, right?
That's what they call it, but it was the wisest. He deserves credit for one of the wisest decisions ever made.
I don't know. Was it worth 4 cents an acre? 4 cents a square? I don't think
we paid $7.5 million for it, and they pulled like $1 billion worth of gold out of it at $20 an ounce.
Yeah.
So I think it was a bargain.
Well, I hope it doesn't melt. That's all.
Russia gave us Sarah Palin.
And if we hadn't bought it, we would have Russian troops stationed on the North American continent.
They could look out their window and look at us.
Well, Russia sort of devastated the area with stealing, killing all the animals with fur and everything else. And once they ran out of fur,
they didn't care anymore.
And they ruined the Indian or the Indian population.
Inuit population.
Inuit, yeah.
Inuit's another name. They got the tribal names, and they go from there. A lot of them like the Indian, but anyways, beside the point. When the United States took over, they had to teach the Eskimos up there how to recarve totem poles because the Russians thought it was a religious idol, and because they're Orthodox.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
no, it's a totem pole. It's a story pole.
But it's related to family anyway, isn't it?
Family, it's hard to understand.
A few people look like you on the poles.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if you know that.
Big beer. And they had to teach them how to recarve. Now, and they don't save the poles per se. Well, once they carve, they leave them out there and they let them rot.
Do you know?
So you don't refurbish. In other words, you don't fix them up as they start to deteriorate.
No.
So they're just supposed to last
where our totem pole in Chicago is?
Yeah, down at Waveland Golf Course.
Yeah, Addison. It's the second pole there too.
Isn't there one by the Field Museum too?
Who's the first pole?
There is one by the Field Museum.
Is there?
I think there's a totem pole there.
I haven't seen it.
I do remember seeing that.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's out fiberglass now rather than wood. So the last.
Where did the Eskimos get fiberglass?
It wasn't easy.
Hey, Jack, Home Depot.
They gave them Eskimo pies.
Yeah, Home Depot. Yeah.
Why do the Eskimos wash their clothes in Tide?
I don't know. Why do the Eskimos wash their clothes in Tide?
It's too cold to wash them out Tide. Which brings us back.
Say goodnight, Gracie.
Trying to get back to another little situation. We were talking before. We're drawing a little parallel between Tom and I were earlier, and other people I talked to, between our NATO Summit and the 68 Convention, as far as the situation, as far as the protesters, as far as the country's condition, as far as the coverage and the anticipation by our news media. Would you say that's a fair thing to say, like the news being around there to make sure we have something happen?
Well, I was lucky enough to come on the Chicago Police Department in 1968, and one of the major incidents I was involved in was the 68 convention. And again, my luck held out, and I was assigned right in front of the Conrad Hilton during the '68 convention. So I was involved in we talked about it before, the Battle of Michigan and Balbo.
Yeah.
And you know what was interesting that I found, and this kind of leads us back to the media. The Chicago Police Department was portrayed in the media. I remember Walter Cronkite's comments about us, and I mean, it was really terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an interview with Muskie, who was Humphrey's running mate, after that convention, and they asked him, when you traveled around the country campaigning, what did you find the sentiment of the country regarding the '68 convention? And he said, strangely enough, I found overwhelming support for Mayor Daley and the Chicago Police Department. So while the media really slammed us, the American public, the rank and file, were behind us.
Mm-hmm.
I know another fast story is there was a Chicago Police Drum and Bugle Corps that I played with for 16 years, and they were also an American Legion post, Chicago Police Post 207. And they didn't know they traveled to the American Legion National Convention every year. Well, in '68, they didn't know if they were going to be able to come. At the parade, the National American Legion parade, the line of march is always the Marine Corps band, which is the official band of the United States, leads the parade off. Then the Army, Navy, Air Force, and down the line. When they found out that the Chicago Police Drum and Bugle Corps was going to come, the convention was in New Orleans, when they found out that they were going to be able to come to New Orleans, and this is unprecedented, they asked the Chicago Police Drum and Bugle Corps to lead the march.
Wow.
It's never been done before, and it's never been done since. And guys that were there, I joined the year after that, but guys that were there said people were coming off the sidewalks, running out into the street to pat the Chicago police officers on the back. So I think that's a really excellent example of, while the media says one thing, I guess the expression is the truth will out, and the sentiment of the American people were definitely on our side.
You know, an interesting thing is that before the Democratic Convention 1968, Republicans did not like Mayor Daley. You know, Mayor Daley was the machine. He was crooked elections. He had stolen the election. You know, after '68, after the convention, Republicans loved Mayor Daley. Everybody thought he, you know, it was his police. He had stood up for law and order. They had put the demonstrators in their place. I love to tell a quick story. A couple of weeks after the Democratic Convention, I was a student at DePaul University at that time. And we had
you were out there, weren't you?
No. That ties in with this idea. A friend of mine and I, we were in a group called the History Society, and we had to go to DePaul. They had like an incoming. We were coming in juniors at that time, I think, 66, 70. And they had a display in the gymnasium of all the clubs and organizations, booths where the incoming freshmen could learn about. Mm-hmm. So we volunteered to man the booth for our history organization. So we're driving up to the north side to DePaul's campus on Fullerton. My friend's driving. And we're both from the suburbs. He gets confused. He turns the wrong way down a one-way street. There was a bus. There was something. The bus was blocking him. He didn't see the sign. And here's a police car. You know, you see the police. And we're thinking, here we are, two college kids, like 2 weeks after the. Oh my God! Pulled us over. The policeman looked, and you could just see him. He looked in, and on my lapel, I'm wearing a Nixon button. And you could just see his eyes go right straight to that Nixon button, and he smiled a little bit, and he says, you know, you boys did the wrong thing. He says, yes, we're sorry. You'll just make a left here, turn around, and see to it doesn't happen again.
At least it was a right turn you made.
Yeah. We said afterward, if I wasn't wearing that Nixon button, we probably would have both been hauled in.
I tell you a funny story about when Nixon was campaigning. I was stationed Selfridge Air Force Base outside Detroit. And both Nixon and Kennedy came through the base when they campaigned. Well, one of the guys, he was a real Nixonite, and we worked on planes, and if you walked past the plane, you were oily. You know, it just shot oil at you. But anyways, he got up to the terminal, and he wangled his way through, and somebody told him, "What are you doing here?" All this stuff. He said, "So-and-so told me to hold the door." So when Nixon came through the door, I come up and shook his hand.
Never would otherwise.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nixon, most of these politicians, they don't know what's going on. They just,
First time a politician shook hands with a guy who was slipperier than he was.
Well, I seen Kennedy going past our hangar. He was up in his convertible there, showing off a little bit.
Oh.
But I was about a block away, so I couldn't see much of him.
No.
Tom, how would you characterize the motivations for the Walker Commission report, calling it, to some degree at least, a police riot?
He probably wrote
motivated.
it before the convention, huh?
Yeah.
I believe you're referring to the man that was in jail. Just so we're on the same page.
The police riot, is he called?
Right. He referred to it as a police riot.
Yeah.
Well, naturally, I wouldn't refer to it as a police riot. I do say that, again, comparing NATO to today to what happened in '68, they are much better prepared today than they were then. I mean, there wasn't training. But again, the demonstrators came into Chicago for the express purpose of creating havoc, and that's exactly what took place, what they got. But again, in the time, I had just turned 21. Most of the guys that I was standing in front of the Hilton with were in their very early 20s. It was a very young department at the time. And what I have found interesting is the demonstrators, the main focus was demonstrations against the war. Probably the majority of police officers that they're throwing stuff at and yelling at were also against the war.
Sure.
But the thing is we became the focus and we became the enemy. But to this day, we're not the enemy. Mm-hmm. We're the people that are assigned to hold the line. I mean, the thin blue line. We've all heard that expression. And again, getting back to asking these demonstrators, what are you here for? I mean, do you really think that you are accomplishing anything, yelling at a bunch of police officers they're assigned to be there?
That is their job.
Yeah. It's their job to be there.
Yes.
We're going back to the police, to the freedom of the press. Freedom of the press says you can write what you want, but doesn't necessarily have to be the truth. They're out for sensationalism all the time. That they want to get their name out there and everything else. I trust the neighborhood papers more so than I do.
They're closer to the story, for one.
Yeah.
Everyone has freedom of speech, but they don't have the freedom to compel anyone to listen to them.
Yeah.
No one is obligated to listen to what they have to say, and they don't seem to understand that.
Well, someone I had worked with had been a journalism major, and he worked for some papers downstate. Bobby Wren, he's since then passed away as a young man. But he said he got out of that business when he found out their one motto was, never let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Yeah.
So he said that was...
that was one of the biggest mistakes, I think, that the Chicago Police Department made the first night when the demonstrators said that they were going to occupy and camp out in Lincoln Park. They probably should have just let them do it. And the first night when the demonstrators were cleared out of Lincoln Park, the news media people, cameramen, newsmen, they got in between the police department and the demonstrators.
Whoops.
Right, and they realized that was a big mistake. They said the next day there wasn't a sporting goods store in the Chicago area where you could buy a football helmet because the news media bought up all the helmets to wear because the night before they were whacked in the head. And then that naturally, it wasn't a good public relations move for the Chicago Police Department because, like John just said, they've got the microphone, they've got the newspapers, and naturally they really did a hatchet job on us from that day until the end of...
but to some extent, I think that's also the beginning of the American people turning on what we call the mainstream media, because so many of the American people were on the side of the police, and they saw that the media was so overwhelmingly touting the demonstrators as the good guys. in some ways, I think that's the beginning of the public turning on the national press and the TV
Feeling
networks.
free to rebel.
That these guys are biased, they're slanted, they're not telling us the truth. They've got an
They're not giving you the news, they're giving you opinion all the time.
And I think that's when people really realize it had been true before that. But this really brought it visible to people, the slant and the bias.
What showed me the same thing close enough, though. Went past the fire, I was watching the fire. Next day I read about it in the newspaper. I could have swore it was a different place.
Right? Well, I do the same thing, and you're involved in something, and you say, "What the hell is that all about?" Or they make dumb things,
emphasizing things that aren't important,
or they don't describe things accurately. That didn't happen.
Well, the other thing was going back to Nixon again. The newspapers hated him.
Oh God, yeah.
So consequently, he always got a bad light, whether he deserved it or not. It's beside the point. He never got any credit for anything.
He would have gotten bad anyway.
Couldn't do anything right.
He couldn't do anything right.
No.
Herb Block, the cartoonist for the Washington Post, always portrayed him with this like a sinister fellow with buckets of mud in his hand. He always had a 5 o'clock shadow. He always had a scowl on his face.
Well, it's just like Watergate. He never proved him to be anything involved except the fact that he protected the people that were involved with it.
That's another story altogether.
But I mean, it was the fact is that this is nothing new. Everybody spies in the other party. It's but the newspapers don't believe that.
What we were saying before about when we talk about demonstrators and who are they, I think you got maybe. I came on the job around the same time Tom did. Tom and I did. Tom got to go down there because what they did was, all the districts in the city or whatever, if you're in detective units. The city, with the police department, your shifts start with the midnight. The first watch is midnight to morning, second watch is days, and the third is afternoons. Well, the midnight and the first and third watches split the whole day in 12-hour shifts. You can start at 11 at night to 11 in the morning, 12 noon to 12 at night, or 11 at night to 11 in the morning, 12 midnight to noon. So I was on midnight to noon out of 48th and Wabash, the old 2nd District Station where Tom was assigned then to. He got to go downtown. We fought the battle of, we stayed back and took care of everything else. But anyway, to me, from what I can see of other situations, such as a year later, we had the Days of Rage. You notice they didn't get on the police quite the same way when this return trip, did they? With the Days of Rage downtown?
No.
The weathermen and all that?
No,
anyway,
they were doing their own thing, and the police were,
Well, maybe now somebody was waking up, at least locally. But you had... But basically, got three different people demonstrate. Those that feel they've got a legitimate gripe and a legitimate right and reason to, present it, which is true. Secondly, you've got those who come along for a lark. This is going to be a lot of fun, I'll hold the sign, I'll throw this and run. Third, you got the professional agitators who use the others. They get in, they get things started, and get out. So I'm sure you saw evidence of all three.
And they're not around there when the bullets.
Oh no! They get out.
They're nowhere near the battle line.
That's why they're professionals. They know when to get in and get out.
When we were standing in front of the Hilton, again being bombarded by debris and chants of
that was
unspeakable. The professional agitators. There was a girl. We referred to her as Hanoi Hannah, but she dressed in a World War I military uniform with the World War I pie plate helmet, and she used to run in. They had a makeshift PA system set up in the park, and she used to run in every night with a different story. I remember one night, to incite the crowd and against us. Again, the message was lost. Now it's the demonstrators against the police. And I remember one night she came in and she took the microphone and she said, I've just returned from Lincoln Park where they're beating a march of nuns and priests. One is dead. There's several in the hospital. It was a complete made up. But the crowd. The crowd, and then they start chanting, murderers.
All of these largely Catholic police officers are beating nuns and priests.
Probably all the guys who went to Catholic school did.
Let me give you a little vignette, of course, from tonight. Walter, there were plans to assassinate the President of the United States. There were plans to assassinate the Vice President of the United States. And what was most shocking, there were plans to assassinate the mayor of the city of Chicago. his famous interview, famous interview with Walter Cronkite that went on for it was like half an hour. Before the convention started, they sat there.
There was no one that could really sum up the situation like the Mayor Daley. I remember the next convention, Daley's delegation wasn't seated. Yeah. And then the following 72. Delegation, Daley was there, and I forget who I'll say Dan rather, I don't really know, but he stuck a microphone in Daley's face and he said, well, this is a very momentous situation. After the events in 1968 and then the last convention you weren't seated, now you're back. Do you have any comments? And Daley said, excuse me, I'm going to go get a sandwich. That's true.
He knew how to handle the press.
What you were saying before about the public in general getting awakened to the fact that, hey, we're not getting all the truth all the time. No. We figured this is the news. My own mother, who passed away about 3.5 years ago now at age 91, at the time she was the youngest of 3 living sisters, I might add, a lady who went to 2-year course at Inglewood High School. She was watching the local news in the evening, down in front of the Hilton and in the park. And it was they showed people all these guys pitching at you guys, and they showed the line of police moving in. Today's show's report just showed the police moving in with the sticks in their hands.
Sure.
And this got her so enraged. She sat down. She was inspired. She wrote this letter to the local NBC. She also sent it to the national. But the world is watching. Guess what? They're watching her. And my dad couldn't believe she wrote such a great letter. She saved it too. It was just a great piece of work. She must have been inspired by the Holy Spirit. So, by the way, good Lutheran girl too.
You know what? When you talk about
German Lutheran girl.
Best thing to ever happen to Catholic Church.
Yeah. Was that Martin Luther?
Yeah.
Great Augustinian.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, there was only one newscaster that was on television, and we'll probably all remember. And he gave the news the way the news actually happened and actually was Fahey Flynn with the gold bow tie.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Fahey Flynn.
Is that Irish? Fahey Flynn.
And one of the websites that we have for radio broadcasting, they have a picture of Fahey Flynn. This must have been over 30 years ago. Real young-looking young man, but I always remember. Everybody gave him credit because black was black, blue was blue, and there was no in between. He said the news just the way the news was to be reported. Yeah. And I remember exactly all what you were saying. Yeah, it was very interesting, Tom. What you were talking about just a couple of minutes ago.
Well, I think again, it's a classic example of the media tells their story. Yeah. But it's a story. And again, believe me when I tell you this. I'm not here defending every single action of every Chicago police officer at the time. Was there overreaction? Of course there was. But the picture that they painted was not anywhere near what actually took place. Yeah. And they suffered for that. I mean, we were just talking about that.
It's amazing what you're saying because you turn on Channel 2. They'll say the news one way. You turn on Channel 5, it's the opposite way. Turn on Channel 7, it's a different way. Even over this weekend when I was up in Wisconsin, Channel 4 up there, the NBC station up there, they gave the news altogether different about what was going on here in Chicago. And I was listening to WBBM on my car radio, and what they said and what they said up there on television was two different things.
Yeah. Like two different events, and it shouldn't have been. Yeah. I was going to say just the one great line from Mayor Daley, and it's something that's still apropos. What trees do they plant?
What?
And what trees do they plant? Talking about the demonstrators, and that's what you'd say to the people at Sarmay. What tree are you planting?
Oh, there's two things on too. If you ever get hold of the Defender newspaper, I think it's dead now. I don't know if it's. It used to give you a completely different perspective.
Oh yeah, well.
The other thing
what their perspective was.
The only thing I got to ask the demonstrators are anti-fossil fuel. First thing I want to know is how you got here. Did you walk or take a bicycle?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how did they get here? Who
Yeah.
funded all of that?
Yeah, well, that's the
And
other
you're
problem.
That's another
against big-
subject, isn't
big
it?
business. Have you got a cell phone? Have you got an iPad? Have you got a what?
Well, they were
Oh,
gym
yeah.
shoes, aren't they? He's got here somehow.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it's from China, for the
Yeah,
most
that's
part.
okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. You know. Yeah.
I would imagine, Tom, the message you're portraying is that you, the policeman, had to be afraid after that, more than we, the commoners on the street. Is that sound like?
Well, I don't really. I wouldn't
Maybe
say,
not
I would say
afraid,
we're
but
afraid, but again,
disrespected, maybe?
yeah, right. But again, the locals. I mean, they were behind us 100%. I mean, I think that's really a really good when someone wants to talk about the media portrayal of an incident and what actually took place and how the American people react to it. Like I say, Muskie, his line was, I found overwhelming support. He said, surprisingly enough, I found, so he wasn't on our side, but like I said, the truth,
But it clarified.
the truth will out.
The funny thing is, I can't remember what I was going to say.
If I was lying anyway.
Yeah.
But where were we, gang?
Yeah.
68 convention.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
we're back there.
68.
But
You're at
I
48th and
remember picking
Wabash.
up a book. Imagine me buying a book, huh?
Yeah, right.
It was up in Dalton Bookseller on the third floor, wherever it is. They had the closeouts, but it was entitled. It was not a very scholarly work. Your Irish ancestors had all Irish surnames with all their variations and where they came from, the counties or whatever. So they had famous people with their names, D-A-L-Y, D-A-L-E-Y, with the different variations. And it mentioned Richard J., and it said he was mayor of Chicago who lost favor with the public after the 1968 convention and the obvious brutality of his police department.
That's
So
why
I
he
said,
was
Jesus,
reelected.
he was more popular than ever, wasn't he?
73.
That made
Was he more-
history.
I thought he was more popular than ever after
Yeah, he
all
was
that time.
Bible. Oh,
Read
I
the
know.
same book.
There was a bumper sticker from that era, and it says that Chicago 68. If you think the police were at fault, next time you're in trouble, call
Call
a
a hippie.
protester.
Yeah, call a hippie. Yeah, that's
Good
true.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Well, that's another thing with the news media. One more thing, John. We can just about time to sign off. But the news media, they were here months ahead of time, just like they were with the NATO, like in preparation, anticipation, what's going on. They were checking out. The Life magazine had the two deputies in front of the amphitheater months ahead of time, and didn't one of them say? One of the reports goes something like, and now signing off from Prague. Because that Czech uprising had happened just before.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, it's just like they were there to guarantee there'd be a success,
I
an
know.
event,
Yeah.
a media event or a sporting event,
Yeah,
if you will.
yeah. Well, that's
if it
what
isn't
they
true, they'll
want.
make it true.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, in fact, when the TV cameras come on, you see a bunch of demonstrators yelling, screaming. You think they're yelling and screaming 24 hours a day? No,
And the
they're all
cameras
standing
go on.
around.
That's
Hey,
right.
here
Cameras
comes
go
the-
on.
Hey, 5 minutes, guys. Put your
Cameras
get your
are on the
signs
way.
ready.
Yeah.
Cameras are on the way, and all of a sudden,
Well,
we're parading around. Yeah,
Well,
God,
well,
look
that's
at
what
it.
orchestrated, right.
Naturally, you see these films of the '68 convention years after, and I, mentioned something about it, and people will say to me, "Well, what do you know about it?" I
Yeah.
said, "Well, I just happened to be there." As a matter of fact, my kids, when they see this on, they, every 6 months, for some reason,
Yeah.
whatever, they say, "Dad, did you ever see yourself on television?" I said, "Yeah, when they were loading that one guy into the wagon, I was the guy with the good backhand."
Yeah.
What was that movie made? Medium Cool, which was like with a backdrop. It was
That's right.
medium filmed here anyway. Medium Cool, I think it was,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Came
I
out
don't
about
know.
69, 70.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it came out then, but they used a lot of the footage of actual events going on here.
Yeah.
Well,
School of
the other
Wrestling.
thing that was going on, they had that big demonstration downtown with the 99% and all that stuff.
Yeah.
A guy I know, he's a little bit of a mooch, a little bit. But anyways, he's a
Don't
great
make them all
mooch.
bad.
He went down there, he got sandwiches and come back.
Yeah. What do you
And
got
never
for
came
free?
back.
Oh, he came back. He grabbed all he could and came back.
He never returned. No, he
We
never
wish he
returned.
never came back.
Fate
Yeah.
is still unlearned.
Yeah, right.
Well, gang, I'm sorry to say we're at the end of the line for
I
this
don't
month.
believe it.
Yes.
Yes.
And we're waiting.
Wait, yeah.
Wait. Before I go say my little piece, we'll be on again. Oh, we're gonna get together on June 18th again. We got to look for some topics. So let's everybody go home and think of some. And we may even have telephone service next time, so we will be radioactive. Until then, remember, history is much more than just a book you keep on your shelf.
You have been listening to Meet the Chicago Historians. Our Historians panel gets together monthly and can be heard over Jack FM, WRHS FM 89.7, and Smooth FM, WRWX FM 88.1, Norwich. We are also on YouTube at Meet the Chicago Historians, where you can access an extensive library of our old shows. Thank you for listening in. This is your announcer, Rich Lang.
Meet the Chicago Historians came to you from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Monday, May the 21st. Hopefully you have enjoyed this program. Our special thanks to Kevin at WRHS and WRWX for allowing us to be on the air. Thank you for listening.